Hi, I'm Chuck Surack, founder and CEO of Sweetwater. Welcome to Sweetwater and welcome to GearFest 2020.
Welcome to day 2 of GearFest 2020. I'm Mitch Gallagher. I'm still Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater, and I'll be your host here for the second day of this online version of our annual celebration of music, gear, and music makers. Now, GearFest is all about sharing our passion for making music and for great audio. We're going to be learning from the best of the best, and of course, this weekend is all about the gear. So thanks so much for joining us. It's going to be an amazing day. We've got an incredible array of interviews, workshops, lessons, special guests, and I hope you'll be able to stay with us all day long because you won't want to miss a minute of GearFest 2020. Now, yesterday was day 1 of GearFest 2020, and it was a fantastic day. I hope you're able to check out our live interviews with legendary mastering engineer Bob Ludwig. We had producer, engineer, superstar artist Alan Parsons here. Lita Ford and Billy Gibbons dropped by. We had our live sound panel, and there was so much more. Now, one of the funnest parts of the day was seeing all the surprise shout-outs from our special guests that dropped by. Peter Erskine, Joe Satriani, Kevin Cronin, Nick Mason from Pink Floyd, Lizzie Hale, Steve Vai, Joe Bonamassa, and Paul Gilbert. Other friends came by. It was truly an amazing day. And now we're excited to get rolling with day 2 of GearFest 2020. To give you a sampling of just a bit of what's coming up this afternoon and this morning, we've got an interview and a lesson with guitarist Richie Faulkner from Judas Priest. Composer, producer, sound designer, solo artist BT will be discussing Stutter Edit 2 and how he makes those amazing sounds. 2 top-level engineers and producers, Jacquire King and Fab Dupont, will be discussing analog recording in our digital world. And we'll have interviews with 2 legends of music, Todd Rundgren and Nile Rodgers. And of course, the ever-popular GearFest producer panel, and so much more. Now here's some good news for you. It's day 2 of GearFest, but you haven't missed out on our huge GearFest hourly giveaway totaling more than $35,000. And we also will have 1 lucky grand prize winner who will take home a fantastic $5,000 recording package. Register now, don't miss your chance to win. Finally, it wouldn't be GearFest without incredible deals on gear. GearFest means it's your opportunity to get the best deals of the year on the gear you need. Our exclusive GearFest online 10-event flash sale runs through today. But we have more great deals for you, and they're so great we can't advertise them. Call your sales engineer to learn all about the very best unadvertised deals. I'm happy to kick things off here on day 2 with a workshop from Shaun Martin. Shaun's an 8-time Grammy Award-winning arranger, producer, and multi-instrumental musician. He's worked with Kirk Franklin, Snarky Puppy, Erykah Badu, The Weeknd, and he's also a successful solo artist. In this workshop, Shaun will be showing us how to get the most out of our technique and sounds, how to convey style and overall vibe, and he'll be giving us a demonstration of the Korg Kronos 2. Let's check it out.
Hey everybody, how you doing? This is Shaun Martin. Welcome to GearFest 2020. I'm here on behalf of my good friends at Korg, and I will be definitely demonstrating all the things that I love about my wonderful and beautiful Korg Kronos. So let's play a few things. That was a song off of my last trio album. It's called Focus. That's right. Yeah, so it's called Focus because I wanted to focus basically on the three-piece being the drums, piano, and bass. I have another trio record coming out where I don't focus on that. I focus on keyboards, and my Kronos is actually the centerpiece of that whole setup, which I'll talk about that in a hot second. So I know that a lot of people are toying between different things. They want to toy between, should I get this? Or should I get that? Should I get this plug-in? But the one thing that I appreciate about this Korg Kronos is the action, because the action of this keyboard, I have the weighted one. This is the it's not the 88 key, but it's the smallest. I think 73 keys, and it's weighted. The reason why I like it so much is because it reminds me so much of the piano that I grew up on, that I practiced when I was a kid. So when I play, all my classical stuff, all that kind of stuff, it was great because it felt the same. So a lot of times what happens is that I'll sit down and if I don't have, a grand piano available for me, I can sit down and do my warm-ups right here on my Kronos. And it's great. It's great for my technique because, believe it or not, as many keyboards as there are, that are out, technique is still important. And I would implore everyone under the sound of my voice to practice your scales slowly. Everybody always talks about, playing fast. But the best way to play fast is to practice slow. And so I do one exercise, and this is just something, that I like to do. I'll do one octave up in one key, one octave down in another key. So let's say I'm going right. I actually do it a lot slower than that. I'm just running out of time, but I actually do it like this slow because I want to make sure that I hit every note. And make sure that I have the right fingering when I start the next. So I always try to go, relatively slow because a lot of times when you want to play fast, the best way to go is slow. It's almost kind of like when you watch. There's a movie that I probably shouldn't disclose only because I don't know what the rights are, But the teacher tells the student to paint his fence and to paint and to wax his car, and to do all these things. But he makes him do everything in a very slow motion because when the time comes for him to do it, his muscles have adjusted to the fact that he has to do it. So he can do it fast because he worked slow. And that was something that my piano teacher taught me when I took classical lessons forever. I took classical piano lessons, forever. From the age of 4 until she passed when I was 16. And then, of course, by then, as a student at Booker T. Washington High School for the Performing and Visual Arts here in Dallas, Texas, I ended up, studying more after she passed. And then I went to Weatherford College, where I studied more jazz, and then University of North Texas, where I studied more jazz and classical. So the one thing that I had to learn was how to practice slow, because that's really the only way that you'll get it. So when you talk about playing, and you talk about really enhancing your craft, I would say definitely take your time. Take your time and really make it a thing. Another thing, a lot of times, even when I'm doing scales, when I'm doing whatever, fingering is very important. And the one thing that you really have to remember with those kinds of things is that you really don't want your thumbs to hit a black note, right? So you'll be playing. Right. It would be so much easier to be like, it would be so much easier to do that. But the problem is that it's harder to get. For one, it's hard for your thumb to get on these black notes when you're trying to do, runs like that. So, that's something to think about. Everybody does different things, but I know that's how I was taught. I was taught to, definitely when you're doing your scales and your arpeggios, keep your thumbs off, because it inhibits your speed. There are favorites, right? And so you can have all of your favorites right here. And so I just loaded up like my I call this my spring bank, because when I did a tour earlier, like in February of this year, and I had this keyboard with me, and it was easy for me to move around when I had these sounds. So I was able to use my harmonica. And the funny part about it is that I had to change. Some of these had like colors on them, but I changed the colors because people would always say, "What is that?" I'm like, I can't tell you. I can't tell you which harmonica it is, but I can tell you it's a harmonica. That's all I got. So, that was a thing. And then, of course, the Rhodes here. Finish that song. Actually, I probably shouldn't be playing on this, right? But yeah, and then there's a vocoder in here that I love, but unfortunately I'm out of channels. But and if you can see here, right here, I have a lot of my sounds are stored right here on this hard drive. So it makes it pretty easy to get around. But howsoever, I think that's one of the great things about the functionality of this keyboard. I'm able to go quickly. And find, all kinds of presets and yada, 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 and it makes it, so much easier. And I've always loved being able to go and just, off the top, just. Sometimes I just do this like on a Tuesday, just like waking up, just to like get into the groove. crazy stuff. You know, I just be having fun. One of my favorite songs that I love to play on this patch, you know, is Mercy, Mercy, Mercy. Joe Zawinul, man. I've always loved that tone. That's one of the songs that actually got me into like funk jazz. Like it got me into like funk jazz. Cannonball Adderley Quintet. That's a great record. You know, Woe Was Me, Mercy, Mercy, Mercy. And my dad had the album. Like he had like the actual vinyl, and I was like, oh yo, like I would play that all the time. Da, 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 da. I would play that album like all the time, you know, and I was like, I don't know, 12, 13, and my dad would be like, why are you playing that? Like, why aren't you listening to, like, you know, whoever was out at the time? I was like, whoever was out at the time was cool, but I like listening to that, you know, and that's, you know, like, I'll never forget the first time I heard Giant Steps, man. You know, so, you know, those are the things that really got me into playing. That's what really got me, you know, started, you know, and, you know, just hearing that, and then hearing, you know, oh man, listen, Michael McDonald is my absolute favorite. If you ever want to see me like fanboy out on anybody, it's Michael McDonald. I'm probably going to fanboy out of him. But nonetheless, you know, I've talked to you a lot about Chord Chronos 2, you know, about how I practice. And of course, you know, if you're looking for something to check out, I would highly, highly recommend this keyboard, because this keyboard is definitely the workhorse. And the thing about it is, you know, if you want something a lot, you know, a little simpler, because this has a sequence, onboard sequencer, you know, you want something. This is. It can be an interface. It can be, you know, it can be so many things, you know, to so many people. You want something simpler? I also highly recommend the Grand Stage. I love the Grand Stage, especially when I'm on tour with like Kirk Franklin and I'm piano heavy. I love the Grand Stage. I love it. I wish I could have had it here with me right now, you know. And when I want to really get like down and dirty, if I want to get like funky, like deep funky, the Prologue. And even if I want to get spacey, I want to get like super, you know, on some otherworld type stuff, Prologue. So, you know, you have a lot of options. You have a lot of, you know, things to choose from. You have, you know, different things. But I'm gonna tell you what I like. I'm gonna tell you what I feel. And at the end of the day, you know, this is probably where you're going to see me for a very, very long time. Shout out to the people at Korg. Shout out to the people at Sweetwater, who have always given me, every time I've ordered from them, I used to order from them like way back even when I was like in high school, you know, high school and college. And they always show love, and they always show such great support. You know, so, and now here I am at GearFest 2020. GearFest 2020, Shaun Martin, super, you know, keyboard player for Snarky Puppy, Grammy Award winning producer. I have my own solo career. You know, check out Seven Summers. Check out Focus on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get digital music. You could even buy some physical CDs on Bandcamp, if you so choose. Check it out. And of course, I have another trio album that's coming out in 2020, and it will be the videos come out in 2020 for sure. But when you see it, you will see this very chord Kronos, this very one at the centerpiece of it all. So thank you all very much for checking out, this GearFest 2020 with Shaun Martin from Snarky Puppy, Kirk Franklin, and Shaun Martin. Because Shaun Martin still plays for Shaun Martin. and thanks so much to the good people at Korg and the fabulous people at Sweetwater for having me. GearFest 2020. Hey, COVID-19 ain't got nothing on us. We always gonna make it do what it do. I'll see y'all next time. Thanks so much for having me. Peace.
Delay rules, except when it's on your shipment. Sweetwater, always fast, free shipping. But we don't stop there. Sweetwater has the largest inventory of pro audio and instruments anywhere, and plenty of passion and expertise to help you make music. Get shopping and start playing at sweetwater.com.
Man, Shaun Martin's got me all excited to sit down and play some keyboards, maybe pick up a chord Kronos. Man, that was just awesome. I love that whole workshop. Now, don't forget that GearFest is all about gear, and this is the best time of the year to shop for new gear because we've got our exclusive GearFest Online 10 event flash sale going on right now and continuing through today. During this massive sale, you can get up to 75% off on all the gear that you want and need. But the deals don't end after the GearFest close this evening. We'll have great deals on tons of incredible gear running all the way through June 30, so don't miss out. And the huge GearFest giveaway continues hourly today as well. Don't forget to register to win your share of the $35,000 in free gear we're giving away, and for your chance to be the grand prize winner, we'll take home a fantastic $5,000 recording package. If you're watching on social media, do us a favor, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We appreciate it. Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater. You know, one of the amazing things about being here at Sweetwater is as we've grown over the years, we've really become a destination for our customers and for our manufacturer partners, but also for artists. Artists come in, they may do a performance, they may appear in a sales meeting, they may be here on behalf of a manufacturer, but we always try to sit down with them and catch an interview. With this incredibly diverse array of artists coming in, we've been able to pick their brains, we've been able to pick up tips, get some tutorials from them to learn how they think about music, how they think about audio production, and now we're bringing all of that wisdom, all that experience to you by taking the best of those interviews and presenting them here.
You can never be so judgmental as to suggest that anybody not play the guitar.
Right.
Right? But what everybody should be striving for is having the guitar become slightly secondary to the impulse of music you want to make. And it's a very subtle, but once you key into it, very identifiable thing. Are you playing the guitar based on the scale presented to you? Or are you using the guitar to express an idea that happens, and it could be 1/10 of a second before you play. But if you can honor that intention, that's what I'm interested in as a player. Now, you're also going to have people who want to play the guitar because they love how it feels to play guitar.
And I had music in my head. And I had these riffs and melodies, and I wanted to play them, and I had the instrument, and I had no idea how to get them out. And anybody who learns the instrument, we often have similar paths. You take lessons, you learn the scales, you learn the arpeggios, learn the chords.
Right.
I did the same thing as anybody. I mean, I self-taught a lot as well. But, you know, learn the stuff you're supposed to learn.
Sure.
And in that process, I forgot my original goal, which was I've got music in here, and I want to get it into my hands and out through the amp.
You're going to have to figure out the puzzle for yourself, and you're going to have to work harder than your next-door neighbor and longer, and that'll help you succeed. Be at the right place at the right time with the right thing. If I want to be a country singer, why would I live in Paris? You know the answer. Where should I go?
I would suggest Nashville.
Nashville, that's a good idea.
Thank you.
The mountain's not coming to you. You got to go to it.
And the amp gives back. It's not just taking, you know, it's not just taking what you're doing. It is actually feeding the player because it makes you play different when the amp responds. And that, in the best case scenario, whether that's blues music or country or anything like that, the amp becomes a part of the equation and does dictate how I play quite often.
Well, you said that the amp is the most important, then it's mic placement, and then it's guitar, as far as the
Yeah, I would
equipment
say
goes
so.
in terms of the tonal equation.
Well, it's all, Ken Fisher always said that, you know, with Trainwreck. He was always like, a great amp and a crappy guitar could be the greatest thing you've ever heard. Crappy guitar, you know, or, you know, great guitar through a really crappy amp, I don't know.
Right.
Might not work.
Right.
Might not say, might as well have a, you know, bad guitar.
There's also an element of making them your own. Tell us a little bit about that. How do you look at a song and say, this is what we need to do for it to sound like us and for it to be on our recording?
Because that's a very fine dance. How to do it respectfully, how to take someone's song and make it your own without clobbering all over what like the essence of the song is and how the artist intended it. But for
Luckily,
us,
it has been a very organic thing. It's just the two of us sitting in a room and just playing it. And it's kind of like what comes out. Like we don't have to work too terribly hard at thinking about, oh, what should it be or what shouldn't it be? It's kind of like what it is.
But I think that that's also a function of having done so many Tip of the Hats at this point. Like that's why we started doing that video series, was to learn ourselves better by learning other people's songs. I mean, that's how you get better at anything. It's, you know, you pedal the bike around the neighborhood countless times, you play that, you know, AC/DC riff 1,800 times in order to get the muscle memory. And so for us, learning other people's songs, we were building up the muscle memory of who we are as artists.
I feel like I need to put the work in, and the biggest thing is consistency. And I think I play the best probably when I'm in a situation where consistency is happening by necessity, whether I'm in a studio and just playing and writing and recording every day so my playing gets better, or if I'm on a tour like G3 and I have a certain set of music to play and I have to keep that up, and so I need to make those chop sessions happen every day. And then we're playing so many shows that there's that real high level of consistency where you can perform the way that you want. That's when I'm at my best.
And you know, the smoke clears and there's Vi, and with his red guitar, it looks so cool. But I still aspire at this day, you know, that I was 13 then, I'm 31 now, I still aspire to be as cool as Steve Vai was in Crossroads. His playing was so effortless and so much joy, and it just looked like so much fun to do what he was doing.
And I wanted to make sure that my records sounded alive, you know, that they sounded like, you know, that they were inspirational, that they weren't like perfect, dull, flat, you know, I've sung this 99 times and everything's perfect. I wanted to get a performance, and so, you know, I just had, as soon as I could, I got my own tape recorder and started doing it myself, and that was what really was the Fly Like an Eagle record. I recorded all that stuff at my house. I mean, I cut the tracks in the studio, went home and worked on that and Book of Dreams and all those hit songs on my own in my living room with my little 8-track tape recorder. I had a sync tone, had a stereo mix, and it gave me 5 tracks.
Wow. That's amazing.
1-inch tape.
Right.
And that's how all those songs were made.
Amazing. So what is the process for writing the songs? Do you come in with lyrics first? Do you have riffs first? Or how does the song evolve?
Different ways. It's always from inspiration, though. We don't have writing sessions. We never just call each other up and say, hey, let's go in the studio and write an album. That never happens. One or the other of us will come to the other guys with some music. Usually it starts with a lyric for a chorus or a verse or something, and a melody. So usually a few chords and a melody is how something starts out. And then, you know, you call the other guys, and I'll send it over to JD on my voice recorder off the phone and go, hey, listen to this, what do you think of that? And then we'll play it for Teddy, and he'll go, oh yeah, that's pretty good. And then we'll end up all getting together. So we all do the music. I usually write the lyrics, and it's all done different ways. And obviously Ted, as a keyboard player, will bring something different to the table because JD and I write on guitar, which is a different animal. So he'll come in with some wacky piano chord or something. He's like, what if we did this? And we're like, wow, that sounds cool. We don't know how to do that.
Because that's what I do. Right. You know, it's like being a railroad engineer, right, and having a whole bunch of HO trains all over the house, you know, that run throughout the house. Right. You become, if you are really about what you do, to a greater or lesser degree, and it's different in grades and degrees for different people, you become that. You live that every day. It doesn't go away at 5 minutes past 5 in the afternoon. Right. And start again at, you know, 8:59. No. It's all the time. How can I do this better? Or what do we need? Or what are the requirements for tomorrow's gig? What is the room going to be like? What heads do I need? What do I have to work with? And finding some compromise to play the best, as a player, the best that you can.
You know, I'm kind of a little bit of a control freak, I guess, to a fault, but at the same time, I really enjoy being around the creative process. And I know some producers, they get to the point where they've had some success and then they stop coming in as much and leave it to other people to do. And I wouldn't be good at that because, like I said, it'd be fear of missing out on something, as well as to get the sound and the vision that I have in my head for something, I've got to do it.
Right.
So I'm still like doing 90% of my own engineering and even playing a lot of the instruments. And to me, that's just, it's too much fun to miss out on that. Right. So.
A lot of what I try to do these days, I try to do outside of normal guitar style. I try to get inspiration from other instruments or things that are just interesting to me, like music from the Bulgarian Women's Choir or something. I transcribed some pieces that were these choral arrangements, but all on guitar. And so there's weird harmonies and rhythms and stuff. And so those kind of things I'll do just to expand my vocabulary musically as a guitarist, as a composer.
I think when I started learning how to play the drums, like I said, I would just put on headphones and play along with it. And even today, I'll go out to my drum kit and put in an album that I really like and play along with it. And I feel like that helped me musically, but it also helped me from a kind of a performance standpoint too, because I felt like if I like closed my eyes, I felt like that band's in there with me and we're all playing together. And I don't know what it was. Maybe that was just me fantasizing about playing live, but that was something that I really enjoyed doing. And so I think now, because of that, I like to have everything in my mix.
That ties into a quote I saw from you in an interview that I thought was really cool, which was something along the lines of creativity calls for change.
Yeah.
I thought that was really great.
Yeah. And that's to me, that's always true. Mm-hmm. That's always true. No matter what you come up with, no matter how many hits you got, no matter what it is or how great you are, you know, it's about that change, man. Right. You know, and always be looking forward to it.
Right.
Well, we got to figure out what groove is, first of all. And I think it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Mm-hmm. And when you think of a groove, you know, it's just, right, like a record, you think of an LP, right? Right. It's the groove, right? So you're staying in the groove, you're trying to get in the groove, and so you don't vary from the groove. So it's just, to me, it means all playing together and making a kind of music that feels good.
Sometimes I've had artists where we've just talked and then I realize where they want to be in their career doesn't feel like I can connect there. And I'll have this wonderful conversation, and then I'll just send them along their way, and they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I don't think we're meant to write together. I think maybe you're supposed to come here and we're supposed to talk. But wait a minute, I don't understand. I mean, we're paying you to hang out with you. I don't want your money. We didn't do anything. You know, go give it to somebody else. But I'll take your money if you want me to write you a stupid song.
Right.
I'll take it. But do you really want that? And they're like, no. And then they're shocked how honest I am.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people, you're not supposed to work with people. Maybe you're just supposed to talk to them and connect.
When you're composing, you have to keep in mind what the possibilities are of the other instrument.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm going to write, and the instrumentalist. Now, in the classical world, there's certain expectations from a musician to be able to perform, like if you have a violin, you go, of course, as a composer, you have to know how to bow it, you know, you got to, how to phrase it, what the fingering is actually going to be so it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a very bad form to compose something that doesn't sit well on an instrument. I learned this because I've been composing, and what happens is, you know, I'd get all uppity and, you know, write something on the guitar that was, and try to impress the other player of a French horn, you know, to how cool I can, and he'd be like, I can't play this.
Right.
And I go, you can't, but you should be able to. He goes, well, I can, but I don't want to. It's not fun, you know what I mean? It's too hard.
I think everybody does. I mean, you know, we have to deal with the ego. You know, we're alive. You know, we have to have enough ego to get out of bed and brush our teeth and stuff. But you know, but I think you know, there's that, you know, comparing yourself to other people, or the competition, or wondering how. And it all comes from, well, where's my place in the world as a musician? What is it? You know, and it really comes from fear and insecurity, I think, because really, I think the best antidote to that is going back to square one of why we play an instrument. And that's just because it's fun, because there's joy in it. We receive joy, and if we receive joy, it's like walking in a room. If we start smiling, it's just a matter of time before somebody, if not the whole room, starts smiling. You know, it's infectious.
Case candy, plus real candy. Sweetwater, free candy with every order. But we don't stop there. Sweetwater has the largest inventory of pro audio and instruments anywhere, and plenty of passion and expertise to help you make music. Get shopping and start playing at sweetwater.com.
Hi everybody, Jim Keltner here. I want to wish you well during these crazy days. Whether you're out on the streets having your voices heard, or whether you're tucked in nicely in your music room, coming up with new ideas like I'm trying to do. I want to welcome you to Sweetwater's virtual GearFest 2020, so that when you're looking around your little room, trying to figure out how to improve that space, keep that in mind.
Hey guys, this is drummer Little John Roberts, and guess what? Sweetwater GearFest is here this year, and they're going virtual. So me and all the guys at Tama Drums encourage you to go check them out. I had a great time performing there a few years ago, and Sweetwater, just some great people, and it's an amazing show. So go check it out virtually this year.
So that was pretty cool, looking back at some of the great moments from the artist interviews we've done here at Sweetwater. Now, we have done literally hundreds of interviews with artists, producers, engineers in every genre, everything, and they're all on YouTube. So if you want to check some really cool moments out, look back on those, because there's a ton of great material there. And that brings me to one of the great things about GearFest, and that's that we get to check out an incredible range of artists, engineers, and producers during a weekend like this in virtually every genre. From EDM to country, to pop to R&B, to jazz and metal, we cover everything here at GearFest. We've got drummers, guitarists, bass players, keyboardists, we've got songwriters, live sound engineers, DJs, recording engineers, mastering engineers, producers. I mean, they're all here. And the cool thing is that you can learn something from all of them. Even if you're not in that particular genre or you don't play that instrument, I just find it so inspiring. I'm just so pumped up during GearFest. And speaking of inspiring, it's super exciting to have Richie Faulkner, guitarist with Judas Priest, join us here for GearFest 2020. Richie's visited us here at Sweetwater before, and he's one of the nicest guys in the music world. I mean, he's basically living the dream. He was asked to step into one of the biggest metal bands ever, Judas Priest. I mean, how cool is that? So check out this interview and lesson with Richie and our own Nick Bowcott.
Greetings, Nick with Sweetwater here, and welcome to GearFest Online 2020. And I'm fortunate enough to be joined by my very good friend here, Mr. Richie Faulkner, from the one, the only, the amazing British band Judas Priest. And we're here to talk about riffs and other good stuff. So, Richie, thanks for taking the time, my friend.
Nick, it's an absolute pleasure. Obviously, things are a bit different this year in terms of get-togethers and functions and stuff like that. But it's good that the GearFest is still going on in some capacity, so we can all still get our gear and still record and be creative. So it's awesome to be here.
Cool. And the great thing about doing this via a screen is neither of us have to wear a mask. So that's a plus.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point, actually.
So I got to say that before we go any further, your wall is impressive. Hopefully Marshall will see this and give you a huge check for sort of free advertising, because it's quite amazing.
You know, I don't think I've ever played Marshall with Priest, but I am somewhat of an enthusiast. You know, especially for the White Marshalls. I've always loved the White Marshalls, you know, Richie Blackmore and Randy Rhoads and George Lynch. And, you know, the white ones, there was just something about them. And so, yeah, over the last couple of years, I've just been picking up, you know, as you know, touring around, you know, you do a bit of guitar safari and gear safari, and you end up all of a sudden you've got a wall of them. And they do look pretty impressive. So especially, they're all fake, by the way. There's no speakers in them.
Yeah,
No, I'm only joking. They're all real. They're most of them are vintage as well. I hate the word vintage. Vintage doesn't really make the sound. You know, it could be a vintage amp and it sounds like toilet, but these are actually like they're old ones. They're 83s and 79s, and there's a couple of reissues here and whatever. But there's a few real ones. So all good.
Good. And you've even got a white 2x12 1936 behind you as well, which is cool.
This one here?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a custom order, that one. I can't say that's an old one. I had to spill some coffee on it or get it in some smoky bars before I can start saying that. But that's a new one that they made for me. Because at the time I had one JCM 800 white head and I wanted a nice white cab to go with it. Fast forward a couple of years and I've got a few more of them. So, but that's still here. That's what I'm actually using at the moment. It's got a nice sort of bottom end to it. So I like using that one.
Gotcha. And you're plugged into the plexi and you've jumped the channels. Are you using a pedal or anything? Or just...
No pedal. No. I've got quite into using just a plexi straight, and it's everything dimed. I think it's the Van Halen approach. Everything's dimed. I think I've jumped it, so you've got the bass output on there as well. The bass has rolled off to about 11 o'clock, and I think the bass tone is wound off to, I'm trying to remember, about 3 o'clock. Other than that, everything's dimed on it, and I've just got an attenuator on it, so I'm not knocking the house down.
Yeah, because you would do even with a 90, even with a 2x12. That's going to be loud.
Oh, it knocks all my fillings out. So yeah, just for the purpose of being in the house, it's got an attenuator. But apart from that, it's just straight in. I use a chorus every now and again, as I do on stage. But at the moment, I'm just straight in, so it's beautiful.
Cool. And I've got to ask you this question. Obviously, even with the lockdowns and everything, have you guys, everyone's anxiously awaiting a new Priest album, even though it's only been 2018 was Firepower, but people are chomping at the bit. Have you guys had a chance to sort of get together via the interwebs and all that stuff and write?
Not writing. I mean, we did some writing in February before all this hit. I mean, I think it was during the time it was all coming to the surface that there was this virus going around. And me and Rob, luckily, just about made it back to the States before the lockdown came into effect. But we did get about a month's worth of writing done. We've got a bunch of songs, and they're by no means finished. They're, as you know, when you start writing songs, you've got a few ideas, and then they become more fleshed out, and all of a sudden you've got a start, a middle, and an end. It's almost like a skeleton of bare bones, but you need some meat and potatoes and some muscle to put on it. So we need stuff like mid-sections and harmony sections and guitar solos, lots of guitar solos. So it's the bare bones of the songs. We've got a bunch of them together. We're just waiting for the time where we can get back together again and start playing them and recording them together. I mean, I found out, I'd never done it like this before, but on the Firepower record, we all played it live before we recorded them. And we recorded the drums live while me and Ian played, and Rob sang and Glenn was there. And it really, you've got the songs close to finished. And when you play them, you realize there's probably another 10, 15% to go. Trim some fat here. This needs another part. It's too slow here. Speed that up. pull this back. And that only becomes apparent, really, I found out, when you play it together like you would in a live gig. So we want to get back together at some point and flesh these songs out, play together. And I'll tell you what, Scott Travis, I mean, when you get Scott Travis in a room, he's such a musical drummer, and he's such a respectful drummer. He loves Les Binks, he's a huge Les Binks fan.
Oh, right.
So when he's playing the songs, he's always aware of, this little Les Binks hi-hat part here, or he does things spontaneously that just change the song for the better. So getting him in a room and playing together is just monumental, I think, in the creation of a Priest record. So again, long-winded answer there, Nick, but we're just waiting for the opportunity to get together and play in a room together.
Yeah, so it's symbiotic is what you're saying. That's my big word of the day, by the way. I looked it up this morning on Google. And yeah, it's symbiotic relationship. What a concept, writing together as a unit in a room. Never catch on.
No, exactly. No, I don't think so either, no.
So
it really is, though. I mean, again, fine-tuning those points together. Because sometimes when you do that, you write a song, you put it down, and let's say we can call it the old way now, like the digital way, like the separate way is almost becoming the old way, because the new way is now becoming the way it was before that. But if you record it and put it down, and then you can, okay, we're going to play that song live, let's say, you play it together and it doesn't feel right, or this part drags a little bit, it doesn't feel right. And then you think, well, if we'd have gone through this before we recorded the song, then it would have been perfect, So doing it this way around definitely helps both the recording of the song and the song in general, and just gets the best performances out of everyone, because you're trying to match Scott's finesse and power and Ian's thunder, you know what I mean? So it really brings out in everyone.
Good, yeah, it's funny, like you said, like digital's fast becoming the old way. It's still a great notepad, but, people like yourselves and Slash as well. I interviewed Slash at the end of last year, and he talked a lot about the importance of writing and playing together in the studio to get that vibe.
I think it's vital, really. I think you're right. These days, for me, the digital thing is a great way to record, obviously, but I mean, for me, it's turned into a notepad, so everything I can put down really easily. I don't have to buy old tape machines or have a big facility to play together. I can put down ideas on my phone or, on the computer and build stuff up that way, and then we can go back and do it the proper way, where we all iron out those creases and play together. The spontaneity, really, of 4 people, 5 people playing together, and the singer singing along as well is unmatched, really. I think it's vital.
Yep, no, I hear you. And the question I have to ask, or someone will thump me afterwards, how's Mr. Tipton doing? How's Glenn doing?
Glenn's doing all right. I mean, as can be expected, really. It's the challenges he's facing are obviously, we all know what Parkinson's is, and it's a degenerative disease, and you can only, you can keep it at bay, but it's one of those things that it's always going to be. I'm not a doctor, but I think it's a constant progression of the disease and a constant fight to keep that back, if you know what I mean. So, about a week ago, and he seemed in good spirits. He's obviously in lockdown. He's going a bit nuts, like everyone else is, because of the lockdown and the coronavirus. But he's in good spirits, and it's always good to check in with him every now and again and see how he's doing. But he'll appreciate you asking, and I'll let him know.
Yeah, no, he's a great guy. And at least he's got a really nice house to be locked up in.
Oh, it's beautiful, especially in the summer. Apparently, it's beautiful weather in England at the moment. And as you know, the sun coming out in England is a rare occurrence, but when it does, it really changes the country around. People usually they come out on their bikes and have picnics and stuff, and obviously you can't do that at the moment. But Glenn's place is beautiful. It's by the river, and it's just beautiful to be out there. That part of the English countryside is a beautiful place. So he loves his dog as well. So yeah, he seemed in good spirits. He seemed chipper, so that's good.
Good. Now, on to the meat of the motion. Last time we met, which was in Detroit, you were good enough to show us a few riffs, and I'm going to start this conversation by being really selfish, because I forgot to ask you to show me how to play Lightning Strike, because I'm pretty sure I'm playing it wrong, so I'd like to see how you play that bad boy. So if you wouldn't mind spinning through it, that would be great. Is that cool?
Absolutely, man. I mean, I'm probably playing it wrong as well, to be honest with you. But yeah, it's one of the, I think it was the first song that we released off the Firepower record, and it seemed to get a good reception and kind of set the tone for the rest of the record. So yeah, I'll show you how to play that. If I can remember how to play it properly, no problem at all.
thanks for ruining my day, because you've just proved what I suspected. I'm playing it wrong. I was actually playing an E power chord at the 7th position, as opposed to you're just playing an octave. And
Well, I'll tell you what, whatever, you know, my philosophy is, if it sounds good to you, then it's right. You know, I play chords in different positions all over the neck. I play classic Priest riffs in different positions, as long as the notes are right. You know, Glenn plays the Hellbent for Leather riff like this. And I play it. So I play it more, he plays it more open. And to me, there's no wrong or right answer. If it's right and it sounds good, so, you know, dude, play it the way you want it, you know.
Gotcha. But I must say, your way is a lot more efficient though, because it takes away some hand movement, because you're locked in that position for a while.
Well, I think again, everyone, whatever's comfortable to you, really. If the notes are right, sometimes even if the notes are wrong. I mean, in this song, I play it. The interesting thing about it, everyone seems to. They ask me if I'm down picking and to be honest, I don't really pay attention to how I'm picking it. I just play it the way that I feel is comfortable, if you know what I mean. If it turns out to be down picked, that's great. Usually it's not. I'm usually more of a like a let it roll type thing.
Right.
And the thing about the Lightning Strike song is that most of it is on the upstroke. So it's
oh, it is, yeah.
You know, and on the verse as well. I'm over accentuating it there, but it's on the upstrokes, you know.
Gotcha.
Cool. Because that way, it felt right that way, you know.
Yeah, because a lot of people think heavy metal has to be downstrokes only, and there's a place and time for that, but not always. Like, you know, Dimebag was a big guy saying, hey, sometimes upstrokes sound better because they have a different vibe.
And a lot of times, I find there's a lot of. I mean, I'm a huge Metallica fan, huge Hetfield fan, and he is the god of the downpick. A lot of that stuff, a lot of it's on single note stuff.
Right.
So as long as your upstroke is strong, you can't tell the difference anyway. It's like you're only hitting one note. But then he does it on chords as well, and it obviously has a different tonal characteristic then. But the single picking note stuff, you know, that kind of stuff, it's all single note stuff. So to me, as long as your upstroke game is good, you shouldn't be able to tell anyway. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
And it's easy.
Yeah, way easier. That's supposed to be the gold standard of down picking. How good is your down picking? Can you play that riff down pick only?
Oh yeah, exactly. But I mean, I'm a lazy Brit. I don't know if you are as well, but it seems to run in our DNA. So if I can get away with playing the easy option, I'm going to do it.
The other thing I wanted to point out, which I really like about the Lightning Strike riff, is you're not just using regular power chords. You've got like chord inversions, like major and minor inversions. Is that part of your writing, your tools to make it more interesting? Like the B flat you play there, like you're playing it on the 6th fret and the 5th fret on the low E and A strings, as opposed to a root 5th. Do you ever think about that stuff, or is that just how it flows?
I usually think about it when people ask me about it, to be honest with you. I remember I was at Sweetwater before, and you know, a lot of people ask me after the fact, and that's when I really analyse what's going on. But usually it's a comfort thing. Tone-wise, I mean, I'm looking sometimes for that, you know, Randy Rhoads, Michael Schenker kind of tonal characteristics, and even some of the Priest stuff, you know, was that kind of way as well. So I think it's subconscious and conscious as well. You know, what is it about that song that makes me feel that way, or that riff that makes me feel like that? It kind of, you know, when you hear a riff or a chord like that voiced in that way,
right,
it's a different story. So what is it about that makes me feel like that, and how can I incorporate that into what I'm doing into this song, and so on and so forth. So it's a bit conscious and a bit subconscious as well, because of all the, you know, the influences in the DNA as well, like Schenker, Tipton, and, you know, Randy Rhoads and all those guys.
Cool, good answer. Well, I'm going to now ask you to please play that slowly so I can make sure I'm playing it correctly in the future. So, well, playing it your way as opposed to my way. Not that slowly.
I'll try and play it slowly. Sometimes, you know, we're talking about the feel and how you come up with stuff and why. Sometimes it's harder. You feel it a certain way, and that's the way you play it. And then you know this. If someone asks you to play it slowly, it's really quite difficult, you know, because there's the way that your hand works and everything. But I'll try for you. So this is Lightning Strike. The riff's nice and slow for you.
Well, thank you for that. The proverbial check is in the mail, my friend. Now, I'm going to ask you, if you wouldn't mind, for one last favor. Your debut album with Priest, Halls of Valhalla, that intro riff that you sometimes... last time I saw you live, you actually came out and played that by yourself, and it was just... It's one of those epic riffs, so if you could leave us with that, all I can say is thank you, my friend, and hopefully I'll see you very soon.
Of course, it's a pleasure, Nick, and I appreciate you saying that as well. I mean, that was one of the songs that seemed to be, you know, you never know. I mean, I don't know how to define a classic. Is it a classic sound? Is it a classic because of the age, or is it a classic style? I don't know, but it seems to be one of those contenders. You know, it's been in the set, people ask for it, and it's a relatively new track. So maybe it's a future classic, but it's one of those that it's popular anyway. And it came about, it was an amalgamation of about 4 or 5 riffs that I was just putting down to be split up into verses and choruses and mid-sections or whatever. And I think Glenn and Rob heard it, and they said, no, just put it like that. So it starts with the intro, there's another riff, and then there's a solo, then there's another breakdown, and then there's the verse riff. So it's 5 riffs before he even sings, because they just said, no, that's the way we've got to keep it, you know, and that's the way it turned out. But yeah, I'll play the riff for you, and then
And there's one thing I have to say is I'm sure without even hearing it, Zakk Wylde must have loved that song, because it's all about Valhalla with that gentleman. So
it's actually written about him. No, it's not. But no, hopefully he likes it. Yeah, without a doubt. But yeah, I'll play it for you, and then I'll discuss a couple of things which I think are quite interesting. They might not be, but I think they are. So this is Halls of Valhalla, a couple of riffs from the Redeemer of Souls record.
I love that riff. The thing I love, I'm going to ask you to play it slowly in a minute, and the one thing I'd like you to do at the very end, if you could, is that it reminds me of Stormtrooping by Ted Nugent, the dan-na-na-na-na-na, like that bit at the very end, almost a little bit like, you know, the way you play and the way Glenn plays. So if you could break that down when you do slow it down at the end and actually play that extra, it's really slow, so I definitely get it right. I'd appreciate it. But so what do you find interesting about the riff?
Well, it's funny you should say that, because that's what I was going to talk about. It was, you know, what I was talking about earlier on about how, you know, some of these classic songs shape our own songwriting. What is it about that riff or the way that those guys play it? What is it about the way that sounds that makes me feel that way? And this was one of those conscious, you know, I wasn't, you know, writing to order, but I'm writing with Judas Priest, and it's like, what, you know, you're writing Priest riffs. And so that was the same shape. It's the same shape as the Hellbent for Leather. Right. So it's the same position. I'll show you it, slow it down. It's just on a different set of strings. So it's the same pattern. So it was kind of like a nod of the hat to classic Priest in the modern age, if you know what I mean, without getting too airy-fairy about it. But that was where it came from, so I thought that was interesting.
Oh, that is interesting. Robbing Peter to play Paul, or robbing Priest, or robbing Judas to play Priest? Can you say that? Who knows? I said it wrong, but who cares?
I mean, no one picked up on it that I know of, so we got away with it. But I think you can do that. I think you can, if it's your own song, you can reference, because it is part of the DNA of the band. You know, there's lots of references, lyrically and musically, in Priest's work over 50 years, which reference earlier times in their career. So I think it's totally valid. So yeah, that was the interesting thing. And it was cool that you picked up on that riff specifically, because that's what I wanted to say about it. That's where it came from.
Interesting. Listen, thanks again, my friend. Really appreciate it. So if you could leave us by playing that slowly, that would be remarkable. And thanks again for your time, buddy. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, Nick. It's my pleasure. So yeah, we'll see you very soon up there.
Cool.
And I'll break that riff down for you now before I go.
Cool. Thank you.
everybody. Roger Taylor, DW Drums. Welcome to Sweetwater's virtual GearFest 2020. Enjoy this year's show and stay safe.
Roger Taylor and Jim Keltner. I mean, talk about legendary. How cool that those guys dropped by GearFest. It's just so cool. And only at GearFest. It's the only place you're going to see something like that. I hope you've been enjoying day 2 of GearFest 2020 so far. We're just getting rolling. There's so much going on, and we're so glad you're joining us. Our next guest has had huge success in several different areas. From humble beginnings as a tape operator, he's worked as a producer with some of the biggest artists around, including Peter Gabriel and David Bowie. But that's not all. He also has a thriving career as a film composer. Maybe you've heard some of his recent work in the Fast and Furious movies. But it doesn't stop there. He's also a successful solo artist. And he develops plugins. I'm talking, of course, about producer, composer, sound designer, and artist BT. He's joining us today to talk about the tool he created for making the phenomenal sounds in his music, Stutter Edit. And actually, we're unveiling the latest version, which was just announced by Isotope, Stutter Edit 2. Now, you've heard Stutter Edit a million times in music, film scores, and sound designs, and now you can go behind the scenes in this workshop, this interview, with the man who conceived and designed it. Check it out. BT, thanks so much for sitting down with us today. We appreciate you joining us for GearFest Online 2020.
Oh, man, it's my absolute pleasure. I wish we were doing this in person. We've had fun doing these before, so yeah, it's great to do this.
Yeah, well, you've got so much cool stuff going on. I want to make sure we get a chance to talk about all of it. So let's just dive right in and be sure we get to it. So you're making a big announcement here today.
It's humongous, actually. So, and this has been years and years and years in the making. It's my absolute honor to announce that we're going to be releasing Stutter Edit 2 on the 24th. Wow. So this is, quite literally years in the making. There's so much to talk about it, but it's a remarkable, remarkable leap from Stutter Edit 1 to where we've landed with this. So I can't wait to talk about it.
Man, that's so cool. So why don't you, for those who aren't familiar with Stutter Edit, give us just a little bit of background. Where did the software come from and what does it do?
Sure. So Stutter Edit 1 is, it actually, and we've touched on this a little bit. It has a really, really cool origin story. So at the age of about 14, I found myself sitting on a dusty floor in rural Maryland as a tape op in a studio, cutting tape using a grease pencil, a razor blade, and a little metal block. I don't know if you remember.
I remember doing that very well, yes. Bandages on your fingers, right?
That's right, absolutely. So, and at that time, there's no such thing as, certainly not practical or available, commercially available sampling tools or nonlinear editing systems or anything like that. This is in the early 80s. So there I am, and I'm cutting tape, 1/4-inch tape. I still remember the smell of it too. It's such a visceral experience cutting tape. And I had this thought. I thought to myself, what happens if I measure out, by BPM and using quite literally a tape measure, the length of a bar of tape, and I'm running it 15 inches per second. And I remember sitting there with a pad and a pencil and doing some simple equations and figuring out, okay, at 122 beats per minute, a bar is going to be 4 foot or whatever it was. And then I thought, well, if I cut that 4 foot in half, then that's 2 half notes. Okay, wait a second. If I cut that in 4, then that's quarter notes. And so this idea over the course of an afternoon began to grow. And then I had a thought that quite literally it changed the trajectory of my life. It's not an overstatement either, which is, what if I cut these back together in an order that's different to the order that they were assembled in? And that spurred this idea that has captivated me quite literally my entire adult life. So fast forward years and years, and I was using samplers, the early audio editing systems, like things like sound tools and guitar pedals. And I was doing these crazy by hand, small buffer cutting things, and then running, 1,024th notes through some guitar pedal to flange it for just a quarter note. And then the next beat, I'm cutting, 256 notes and applying a reverb to that. And so I became known for these audio editing techniques. And in fact, certainly in the 90s when my career was really starting in earnest, a lot of heroes of mine, guys like, Peter Gabriel, David Bowie, people like this, came to me asking me to do these kind of things on records that I produced for them. And so, my chiropractor would tell you that this was causing me great distress in my arms and shoulders, right?
Right.
And, but in all seriousness, it's such a time-intensive technique. And also, too, it's very limited by what I was able to do because I was doing these processes manually. The wonderful upside to that is I made a lot of discoveries when I was doing these early techniques that all ultimately found their way into what the beginning was, which was a max patch. So it's a little out of order, but I'll just give a short rest of the story. So round about the time where I was scoring the Fast and Furious, I was doing, all of these crazy audio editing techniques, both in my scores and records that I was producing, my own albums. And I said, I have to find a way to automate this process. And as a kid, my great interests and passions were synthesizers and computers. And in fact, when I was a teenager, in addition to being a tape op and mowing a lot of lawns and a lot of other things to buy my first synths, I taught myself how to program. I saved up also mowing lawns and bought a very early IBM computer, a 5150, and I taught myself to program in BASIC and then eventually BASIC A, some COBOL and Fortran. Totally dating myself right now, but my dad at that time was a university professor, and I actually ended up teaching or tutoring some of his students in programming as a teenager. So anyway, I have a somewhat of a kludgy and hacky background in programming, and I decided I was going to make a go at making this into a plugin. So this is the late 90s, and at this time, of course, there were these amazing things where I didn't necessarily have to learn to write in C++. So, C Sound, Max MSP, where they're kind of shorthands for coding. And I actually still use these platforms for prototyping now, because it's fun, it's quick. I can prototype ideas really easily. So I made some prototypes in Max, and then while I'm scoring the Fast and Furious, this is a true story, Mitch, while I'm scoring the Fast and Furious, I'm literally sitting on my couch with, at the time, I ended up hiring 2 other guys, and I'm supposed to be scoring. I have score keys due the next morning, and we're having hackathons on my couch, making the earliest versions of Stutter Edit. And so then, cut to probably 3 years into that process, Mark Either, who's the CEO of iZotope, who's an amazing human being, aside from what a great company he runs and what a great culture they've created at iZotope. It's a remarkable place, actually. And Mark and I, we have some overlap in folks that we know. Mark went to MIT, and one of my professors and still a mentor of mine, Dr. Richard Boulanger, worked with Marvin Minsky in MIT Media Labs. And so anyway, Mark and I got together through mutual friends, and I'll never forget it. I was performing at Winter Music Conference at Ultra in Miami, and Mark and I got together at one of those, cheesy big Miami hotels, and we sat down, and Mark and I are both total nerds. Sorry, Mark, if you watch this and you're like, oh, you're giving me away. I'm a nerd. Mark, so we're having like this really deep nerd conversation out by a pool somewhere in Miami. And Mark said to me, listen, man, I really get the merits of what you've made here, and we want to participate in it. And so that began the arc of Stutter Edit 1. And then you kind of leap forward a couple years, and of course they brought this beautiful elegance and polish and shine to it. The version that we made was only on the Mac, and they made it so that it worked with Pro Tools and with Windows and all these kind of things. And like I said, it's an incredible team of brilliant people there. And so at any rate, I thought, okay, this is so incredible. This is going to come out, and the dance music community is going to love this, and it's going to be a thing that I hear on all my peers' records and stuff. And sure enough, that happened. And then suddenly people started using this thing in ways that I was completely not expecting. So, I got a call from the managing director for Taylor Swift, and he said, hey, Taylor's singing through stutter edit, and we kind of need to figure out some things about like triggering note gestures. I'm like, wait a second, Taylor, are you joking right now? Like, my kid loves Taylor Swift. This is ridiculous, you know? And then, so we started hearing it on pop records, in trailers, in country records, like Thomas Rhett's T-shirt. And then the film guys got a hold of it, and then it just went just crazy. When sound designers discovered stutter edit, it was pretty remarkable, because what's so special about the first stutter edit, and is special, kind of even amplified in stutter edit 2, is the ability to perform it like an effect, perform it like an instrument. It's an instrument that you perform with using a MIDI keyboard. And so, you know, you asked me what it is, and I went on this diatribe about mowing lawns. It's kind of what I'm like. But what stutter edit is, really simply, is it's this massive multi-effects plugin where every parameter in the plugin is bound to its own timeline of automation, and all those timeline of automations are automated to clock, and it is able to slice up audio into these micro fragments of sound. So I kind of call it, it's sort of like the modern equivalent of a drum fill. And so you hear people use this sound in, like I said, in movie trailers, on vocals, on beats. We were talking about that a little bit off camera. Whenever you see in a trailer, you know, right before there's a big boom and drop to black, these sounds where it goes boom, and then it goes to black. Right. I quite literally, I shouldn't say what film this is, but I was working on it. It's a big film, and I actually didn't end up. My name is not in the credits, so I can't actually talk about what film this is. But I was sitting with the editors for this film, and they had their Avid rig, and you know, they're doing their cuts, a trailer for the studio, like a rough trailer for the studio. And I look over on this girl's Avid rig, and she pulled the UI to stutter edit 1 comes up, and I'm like, what are you doing with that? And she's like, oh, we use this all the time. This is like how we do these micro cuts to audio. And then she's like, and then I have to go back and mimic them, and fades to black in the video. And I'm like, that's weird. I was like, I made that plugin. And she's like, what? Like, it was this total disconnect. Right. I was like, that's my plugin. It's crazy. So anyway, you know, from stutter edit 1 to stutter edit 2 has been quite a profound and amazing journey. And we got so much feedback from people over the years, and have seen all the ways that people use stutter edit 1 and really wanted to amplify certain behaviors and augment certain abilities in it for the way that people were using it, you know, especially, for example, just in this, I promise the last thing I'll say about this. So, for example, for vocalists, you know, you had to continue singing with stutter edit 1 in order to do these kind of vocal chop sounds. If you were using it live in the studio, no problem, you ever recorded vocal. But for someone that's performing, it's sort of like this kind of maneuver, you know, it's a hard thing to think of, to continue singing, and I got to press a key on a MIDI keyboard. So we put in a thing called freeze mode, and what it does is it's basically recording its own input all the time. So it holds an eighth note, a quarter note, a bar, whatever you want in memory, and then you can stutter at it from that. So, you know, I anticipate seeing folks like Imogen Heap with her cool gloves doing all kinds of crazy stuff with stutter edit. So we really listened to what people loved about it, and like I said, tried to really augment its capabilities dramatically.
Right. I was telling you before we started that I had a chance to check out an early version just the other day, and I was just blown away. I mean, the things you have added to stutter edit 2, just wow, man. You got to tell us some about what's in there and what drove those ideas.
For sure. So first, thanks for saying that, and I know you mean that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like I told you off camera. You know, I keep demanding from my friends that are in beta. I'm like, you guys send me reaction videos because it like literally like makes my day to see people. The first time especially the cool thing is too is like Stutter Edit 1 users, when they try Stutter Edit 2, they're so freaked out because it does so much more. So it's my favorite to watch some of our, especially kind of our VIP beta users experience Stutter Edit 2 is really cool. So, you know, a lot of the ideas, it's funny because a lot of these ideas I have been experimenting with for years, and I knew their artistic merit, but they just really weren't practical in the first version of Stutter Edit. So we wanted to, you know, release something out into the world that people could utilize and they could have access to these techniques. And so some things that were sorely missing for me in Stutter Edit 1 were a handful of really robust, modern, interesting digital signal processing algorithms. So we had lo-fi, you know, like bit reduction. We had some filters and a delay in the first version. But some of the things that I know from experience of doing this by hand that are such wonderful additions to this technique are doing, for example, crazy things with reverb. This is actually a good place for me to mention, too, that one of the most important things about Stutter Edit 2 compared to Stutter Edit 1 is the new modulation paradigm in it. So whereas and you saw this because you've tried it, in Stutter Edit 1, you go from point A to point B, which at the time was a crazy thing. You know, like, wait, I can have a delay that goes from 8th notes to 256 notes over a bar. Like, that's a crazy thing. Well, so, and it still is. I mean, you hear this all the time, but we changed that, or I should say we expanded it. So not only can you go from 8th notes to 256 notes over a bar, but you can jump at points, you can interpolate and slew at points, and everything you can scan all the way up into audio rates. You can have a delay line that its refresh rate is A#5, and then spline down into quarter notes, and then jump as opposed to a smooth ramp up to 32nd notes. So this new modulation paradigm is absolutely crazy, and we've called that TVM, which stands for time variant modulator. It's somewhere between an LFO and an envelope, but it really is something new because you're able to go up into audio rate and the points can all snap to grid. So it's one of those, you kind of have to see it for it to properly, in a good way, break your brain how cool it is. So that's an important part of the difference between Stutter Edit 1 and Stutter Edit 2. So and it affects the entire plugin, this TVM. So, and then we added, you know, like I said, a boatload of incredible new effects. So the reverb alone is one of the craziest things, honestly, I've ever heard in my life. And, you know, I love the Eurorack stuff. I'm sure a lot of the folks that will watch this are Eurorack users. And there's some things in the Eurorack universe that are really cool insofar as digital signal processing operations, where you can send different controls to things in certain effects or oscillators, for example, that you wouldn't be able to do in a computer. And this reverb is really me trying to reach out and take some of those techniques from the modular community and apply them to reverb. So that TVM, you can literally apply it to the pre-delay of a reverb. And you say, well, what does that sound like? Like going from an A sharp, you know, splining down to quarter notes for pre-delay. What's crazy is it makes pitch artifacts. So you're able to have this liquid bending metal reverb sounds that have crazy zippering pitch artifacts to them. And this can be very subtle, which is another thing that is, you know, it doesn't everything have to sound like your head's being eaten by a wormhole, right? It can be expressed as simply as a reverb where the wet dry is side chaining, right? And so I've made a bunch of patches to show this. Nothing to do whatsoever with buffer cutting, just these very elegant, nuanced, complex modulating over time effects. So it really it's capable of doing so many different families of sounds that I quite literally, this is hand to God's truth, for easily a year working on alpha builds of it. I keep a text document open where when I make a discovery of, for example, 2 effects that work remarkably well together and sort of parameter ranges, I make a note, like when you have a day off, you need to go spend an entire day exploring this sound family that you found from a combination of the jitter algorithm, the buffers being played like this, and the reverb. So I can't wait to hear what, you know, my friends and peers in the sound design community do this with this, and electronic music artists, obviously folks for trailers, people that are producing pop records, the trap guys. I can't even, when I start hearing this on trap hi-hats, I can die happy. That's when I'm happy. So, you know, because you hear the trap hi-hat stuff, I'll hear, and you'll have these cool little bursts of like, you know, 64th or 128 notes. And I'm like, yo, check this out. You can take that and you can go from 128th notes and curve down to 8th notes. It's a like kind of expansion of technique. So I think you'll start hearing this on everything from, you know, electronic records, to bass music, to, you know, just everything. I can't wait for this to get out into the wild.
That's so awesome. That's so awesome.
Yeah.
So do I understand that you've put together a little demo for us to kind of check out some of the things that this can do?
Yeah, I sure have, actually. What we'll do is I'm going to switch screens and we'll go over here and check it out.
This is a session of a new song of mine that just came out on Friday. It's called The War. I actually used Stutter Edit 2 throughout the process of making it. We actually have a remix contest with Splice. Get all of my stems for free. I've absolutely never done that. And this Ableton Live session I built. So I am going to do the big UI reveal. Spoiler alert, it's pretty freaking epic. Boom, there it is. It has this thing in it that is completely unique. This is the time variant modulator here. We've taken the array from Stutter Edit 1, the available note values or available pitches, and we've turned it on its side. Kind of makes more sense in this context. And instead of just align all these points, you can snap to grid, you know, you can draw in. They also all have their own speed offset, so they can operate at different speeds, double speed, 1.5 speed. So let's listen to a little bit of the song. I'm gonna just fire off some random Stutter Edit 2 gestures on our master bus, and you can get a feel for how freaking crazy and musical this thing is. Here we go. That's live. Stole it away. You twisted the thought in my side so slowly astray. And everybody's so perfect, but you found the smallest reason to stray. Wow, that was sick. Everybody's so perfect, but we were always broken. So I stopped and walked away. See how it's fresh now. So you see how crazy this can be on just on your master bus. Let's check this out on solo vocals. Just stole it away. Slowly you stray. Just taking a look here under the hood. I don't know if you've ever seen a limiter where you can rhythmically modulate threshold. So if you're looking for crazy amplitude modulation effects, this is it. And turn our reverb on. What I'm doing when I hit this lock icon is I'm making it so it doesn't have a start point and an end point. It's one value. Let's listen to this. Nice, beautiful, airy reverb. So what I'm going to demonstrate now is just modulating pre-delay in time. So I have this set to a bar. I'm triggering a MIDI note on my QWERTY keyboard. Of course, performers of any kind, whether you're a drummer, you know, bass player, guitarist, you can trigger this with anything that sends MIDI note information. In this case, I'm using a QWERTY keyboard on my laptop. So this gesture is bound to one bar. Now, I'm going to modulate the pre-delay. Here we go. So I'm getting pitch bend in my reverb by doing a very simple modulation. I'll show you another crazy trick is this post delay. You can actually make it flange. So check this out. So you can quite literally do things with this reverb that you can't do with any other reverb. That's one of all of these effects. All the effects can be reordered. The comb filter is absolutely insane on beats. I wish I could spend like an hour demonstrating this for you guys. So that's a little bit of what's possible with Stutter Edit, and you know, I just can't wait for you guys to get your hands on this.
So there you go. That's it. So you know,
that's amazing.
Like you said, yeah, man, I'm really excited to get this in people's hands. I can't wait to hear what you guys do with it.
That is so cool. That is so cool. So changing tacks just a little bit here, I got to ask you, is that a Fairlight I see behind you? What room are you in? Where are you coming to us from?
Yeah, it is actually. I'm so happy you noticed the Fairlight. It's funny. So I did a thing with the Sonic State folks yesterday, and it went like there's a Facebook group for the Fairlight, and they just went crazy because they saw the Fairlight in there. So yeah, this guy behind me was quite literally a labor of love. I got the system, and it arrived in the mail completely and totally trashed. Actually, wow. So it came from Australia, and actually the keyboard was used on the film Tron, the original Tron. And when I got it, it had stickers on it that said like light cycle burn and, you know, laser disc and all these kind of things. So retrobrighted the keyboard. It took a couple years, no joke. I even soldered green LEDs and paint matched these BX5s on it. But that thing's got a CF card reader in it, SD card reader in it, replaced all the fans, completely rebuilt power supply, wow. Everything literally to the metal. So there's not another Fairlight in the world like that thing. And for those that have played a Fairlight, it is one of the most glorious instruments I have ever played in my entire life. And, you know, my 14-year-old self, that was the holy grail. And so I said, someday I'm going to get one. And sure enough, you know, it found its way into my studio over years and years. So, yeah, so around me is, you know, basically my years of synth hoarding. And I've tried not to get rid of anything, and still have a lot of my stuff from kind of the 90s glory days when people were throwing quite literally. I mean, I wish you could see where my iPad is right now. It's on resting gently, to mind you, on my Prophet 5. It's like Prophet 5 Jupiter 8 original mini Moog here. And all these guys are from, you know, things in the 90s where people were quite literally throwing these, you know, they were quite literally throwing these things out. And so I love electronics. I love working on these. I know the insides of them as much as the outsides. I refurbish a lot of them myself, do MIDI installs and, you know, power supply upgrades and recapping and stuff. So I use all of these on my scores and records. And, you know, I feel super blessed to have this stuff, man. Like I said, I've been collecting it since, you know, buying these things since I was a kid. And there's some remarkable instruments in this room. And so cool. It's the first room I've ever had that's, sound treated too, which is just like, I can't even, I feel like I wasted if you added up the hours, like probably 10 years of my life running out to the car, referencing things or listening to headphones. Right. You know what I mean? Right. It's like you hear a kick drum in here and you're like, oh, that's incredible. Or, oh, that's terrible. Like there's no, I wonder, you know, oh, there's a little bit of a node there at 67 hertz. It's like, oh no, that's wrong. Just get rid of that, you know? Right. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. I've got these, you won't be able to see them in the shop, but I'll send some pictures. I have the big ATCs in here with stereo subs, and the room is really built around those speakers and the Lynx Aurora ends. And our studio designer, Wes Lachaud, God, I hope he watches this. He is such a genius and a lovely human being too. That's cool. Just designed this. I've never worked in a room like this in my life. It's funny, Mitch. I pull up old records of mine that literally are mastered and out that I've like signed at shows. It's not like a demo or something, right? And I've pulled them up in here and been like, wow, missed that. Okay, there's sibilants there. That's wrong. You can like, I can hear stuff in my old records that's actually wrong.
Wow.
So it's an incredible spot to mix in, and I've scored 2 films in here now. I'm working on another to picture project at the moment, and yeah, like I said, I just feel so blessed to work in this room, man. It's like part mix room, part synth cave, and it's, you know, dream come true.
Wow.
So,
wow. Well, maybe someday we can impose on you when people are traveling again and come out and do a tour of the studio and video so we can show everybody what you got going on there, because it looks incredible.
oh, dude, let's absolutely do that. Seriously.
Yeah.
Because this room is like, it's not only acoustically, but the way that it's wired, the way it's wired and how everything functions, I think will be really inspiring to people, because it's not, you know, I have friends that have a bunch of synths and they kind of pull out something and they go, I'm going to use this on this track. This room is not done like that. There's a patch bay, but the patch bay is only for outboard compression and EQ. So anything that I call is like a wet effect. So delays, reverbs, Lexicon 224, the 200, all these things, they're on sends going through the Lynx Aurora ends, and everybody's in auto load, gain stage, level balance. They have gates on them. They have EQ and compression starting points. So in Cubase, Logic, or Live, I have auto loads. You can open them up and you can immediately use every single instrument in this room.
Wow, how
it's
cool.
crazy.
That's
yeah,
so cool.
it's crazy.
So cool.
It took years, but it's crazy. Dude.
Right.
Anytime, you're welcome. Anytime, as
Oh.
things open up, please come see us.
We'll do that, definitely. That'd be awesome. And last thing for you, you probably can't talk about it because I know things are always out in the future and planning or whatever. But are we going to see new music from you? Or are we going to what's happening?
Absolutely, this is a really big summer for us for new music, and I'm really excited to share this stuff. In part because it's crazy times that we're living in, and I feel like our role as artists is to provide people with some little moment of respite from a little breath of fresh air, and I've got some really special new music to share with people. Like, I cannot wait, honest to God. And I know people get excited about the latest project that they're working on, and this I've made some music to share with everybody this summer. That's probably all I'm supposed to say about that. That's the best music I've ever made in my entire life. And people that liked albums of mine, like These Hopeful Machines, is one I hear a lot, or ESCM's another one I hear a lot. This Binary Universe, I hear a lot, are going to be so excited when they hear this new music. So, yeah. So the first songs from this project dropped last week, called The War and 1 a.m. in Paris. So check those out, and it's a good taste of what's coming for you guys this summer.
That's awesome. So exciting. And congratulations on Stutter Edit 2 coming out. We just can't wait to get our hands on that and start digging into it. And man, you got a lot of cool stuff going on.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I so wish we could do this in person, Mitch. We're gonna, when things are, if we got to do it in masks, which we won't, but if we do, you're invited anytime.
Well,
seriously.
thank you, man. I appreciate that. And thanks for taking time for us today. I know you're busy with everything you have going on, but we appreciate you joining us here for GearFest 2020.
Absolutely. You guys have a great one. We'll see you soon, man.
Right on. Take care.
Okay. Take care.
Our thanks to BT for joining us here at GearFest Online 2020. I hope you enjoyed the interview. Such an amazing guy, and Stutter Edit 2 is such amazing software. Be sure to check it out. I'm Mitch Gallagher.
The GearFest sale just got a whole lot better. For 2 days only, save up to 75% on all the gear you love. It's all online during the GearFest 10 event flash sale. Find exclusive deals on top brands, instruments, software, live sound, and recording gear, plus so much more. It's all happening for 2 days only at sweetwater.com/GearFest.
So I just made myself a cup of tea. I guess one of the hazards of the gig is now I'm all sticky. I got honey all over my fingers and my mustache. But anyway, next up, we're joined by a pair of great recording engineers and producers, Jacquire King and perennial GearFest favorite, our old friend Fab Dupont. Jacquire's credits include Kings of Leon, Cold War Kids, Tom Waits, Shania Twain, and No Doubt, and many more, of course. While Fab has worked with a long list of artists, including Shakira, Jennifer Lopez, David Crosby, and many more. Fab and Jacquire will dissect Jacquire's recording of The Wine of Lebanon by Cass McCombs. Cass has been described as one of this generation's most important songwriters, and what happened is McCombs set up shop at Bill Putnam Sr.'s United Recording in Los Angeles. I mean, that's one of the recording shrines, right? And they were recording this track. So King shares his first-hand knowledge on recording, how he goes about making great analog-sounding records, and using modern digital tools. Fab, take it away.
Hi everyone, this is Fab Dupont. Welcome to GearFest 2020, the virtual GearFest. I have the great pleasure of having Jacquire King here, and I'm going to interview him on his first ever Luna recording session. Luna, the recording system by Universal Audio. You've heard of Luna. If you haven't, now's the time. Hi Jacquire, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Fab. How are you?
I'm doing great. I see you're in your studio in Nashville.
I am.
And I am in my studio in New York, and these are the wonders of modern technology.
Here we are.
Yes, here we are. So I listened to this session, which, by the way, everyone, the session is available for download on the entire session. No smoke, no mirrors, no hidden things behind curtains. The session that Jacquire produced and recorded and mixed is available for you to download. So I propose we listen to a couple bars, like say the intro up until the chorus of the song, so you guys have more of a sonic idea of what came together. Here we go.
What's left when fortune fair returns a thief? Providence is too brief. What's left to grieve? See the bitter rain after the flood. What remains? The wine of Lebanon. The wine of Lebanon. What's left when harvest tugs upon?
Et voilà. Sounds really lovely and mellow and, dare I say, modern vintage. Jacquire, what's the idea behind the project?
You know, this is the first multi-track session that was done in Luna, so we wanted to create this opportunity for the users, but it's also an opportunity for us to kind of battle test it and put it through its paces. We went into United Recording in Los Angeles. I worked in Studio A. And we set up a pretty big Apollo rig to run Luna on, because Studio A has a Focusrite console. There's a BCM10 in the room, and then just to be able to bring in a system and set up something that was able to incorporate using those consoles and also all of the Apollo Unison technology for the virtual record pads. Wanted to bring a traditional studio setup together with this modern recording system.
All right, so it was a mostly live session, right? A live band.
Yes,
and
it was
how much of it was
How
much of it was recorded live, and how much of it was done in overdubs?
The majority of it what I would say would be done live. We took the drums, the bass, the piano, Rhodes keyboard, electric guitar, and a scratch vocal as the foundational track. Okay. We overdubbed a pass or two more of keyboards. There's some Juno in there. Mm-hmm. Dan, who was playing guitar, Dan Aid was, I think we did one other pass, so there's a double of his guitar parts. Mm-hmm. And then we redid the vocals. The vocals are doubled. There's some doubled harmonies. And then once we'd completed the tracking of the song for the band, then we had an arrangement done for the strings, and then recorded that out in Santa Cruz at Universal Audio.
Oh, that's amazing. Jacquire, do you remember what your Apollo rig was at United? What did you bring? What did you guys bring?
There was an X16 and two 8Ps and a twin.
All right, so that gives you about 16 pre's and 16 line-ins. And you dropped that right in with the $500,000 Focusrite and the BCM10 For those of you who don't know what a BCM10 is, it's a bunch of 1073 with faders attached to it. Let's just look at it that way. So how did you parse your stuff? I can show actually on the session, but how did you parse your stuff? How did you decide what you would use where and what you use unison pre's for and whatnot and stuff like that?
Well, I wanted to just to demonstrate that the Apollo platform with the Luna recording system is ready for a professional studio environment. So I wanted to have the 16X there to interface, to be able to use some channels on the console and use the BCM10. I wanted primarily to have the dynamic things like the drum mics on the kick and the snare, overheads. The piano is with the unison record paths. Cass's vocal is. I wanted the majority of the record paths to be the unison technology, and then I used the Focusrite for the bass and a couple of the room channels for the drums, and then the electric guitars are on the BCM10. I just wanted to build a really big system and incorporate both sides of the platform technology and just bring it all together for myself, because I've sort of been 1 foot in, 1 foot out over time, just because of the way my studio environment works. I haven't fully switched over, and I want to, and so I saw this as an opportunity not only to push the limits of what Luna could do, but also sort of prove it for myself. And it piggybacks off of the video I did some time ago with the sort of the hardware shootout.
Yeah.
I wanted to take kind of another step along that journey for myself and incorporate all these things.
That's awesome. For those of you who are going to download the session, if you want to see, and that's one of the amazing features of Luna. So Jacquire was in LA at United, recorded this, and then the session is on the site. I downloaded the session. I'm here at Flux. I click record on the snare channel, and Jacquire's settings and Jacquire's plugins from that session are coming right up, right here on my system, because he's using the UAD real-time plugins. And these are record effects. They're being recorded, committed to tape. So that is a very cool feature. So I strongly urge you to download the session and check out how Jacquire did it, because you can. So that's cool. And you can see here throughout the session all the different channels that had the unison preamp. Like Jacquire said, this is the lead vocal, this is the lead double, that was unison, and the violins on the subsequent session and stuff like that. So that's an important aspect of Luna, that it integrates with Apollo so well that the settings of a recording session can actually travel with the session. If you think about it, if you've been doing a lot of traveling from studio to studio, it's pretty awesome. Let's nerd out a second. Enough talking about music. Nobody cares about music. Let's talk about knobs, because every DAW has its own idiosyncrasies and its own ways of doing things. So and everybody, all of this, you, me, we all have different workflows. So I see the way you did it here is you basically bust every group of instruments into a bus, right here, which is in orange. You can see the bus, and those buses are routed to a main bus. You have processing on the buses, and you have processing on the main bus. So what was your idea of doing that? Like, how did you think, how am I going to organize my session in this brand new DAW? What do I do? What went through your head?
Well, I mean, oftentimes I like bussing things, all the drums together and just the different instruments, so that I can have a little bit of treatment on those groups. So I can do parallel compression, let's say, on the drums on that bus. But so that's kind of a standard thing for me. And then just take it to a mixed bus treatment. Take all of those subgroups to the mixed bus. Another reason, especially in Luna, which is really cool, is on each of those buses there's the spill feature. And the spill feature lets you, so I've created, in much in the way that like an SSL console has the VCAs in the middle of the console, so you can sit in the middle of the console and you have control over those groups. I mean, it's working like that as well. So I can automate and adjust the volume of all of the drums with that one bus. But then the spill feature allows you to solo it up, solo all the drums up, and just focus on those, just hear those. and just be in that one location and so I'm not scrolling all over the place in the mix window. But what I love about it especially is that it mirrors that to the edit window, so that if you push the like you hit spill on the drums, then only the drums are showing in the edit window. And that's really convenient instead of having to scroll around to try to find something and get it into your view, and you can just focus. You can just focus on the automation there.
It's pretty awesome. I really that's one of my favorite features of the whole thing. It's really great to be able to work like that. So we have a basic idea. You can see here Jacquire's organization. The bass is on top and it's pink, and then there's like blue drums, green guitars, orange synths, blue leads, and other vocals. Effects, these three things are effects, a reverb, a microshift, and an echoplex. And then there's the strings, and these at the bottom here in orange are the buses. So we saw that you organized all your sessions going through these buses. And one of the main features of Luna is the ability to insert Neve summing modeling on the buses. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you use it?
Every time I listen to something kind of play back in Luna through the tape and Neve emulation, it gives me that feeling of being in the studio when I was working with just a console and tape machine. I remember very specifically the point in the session at United. The setup was really intense, and there was some troubleshooting, and once we actually started recording the song and kind of getting some takes to play back, I was listening and it just kind of struck me how analog and beautiful it sounded. That's I would attribute that, I would attribute it to many things because it's really well designed software, but those emulations really sort of add a lot that it has been missing from digital recording until now.
How would you describe it in words for people who are going to try and get the session and then turn all the studios on and off? Because you can do that, by the way. If you click option, now you can turn off all the studios on the whole session, and then you can turn them back on. So it's really easy to A/B. In your own like emotional description, how would you describe that sound? What does it do to your sound?
It makes it feel warm and gives it texture and depth and the way that it treats the transients. I mean, typically in digital recording and mixing in the box, we have to work so hard to kind of create saturation and distortion and all these sort of layering of those types of elements, and the transient control and the gluing together that you get out of tape and a console. This gives me such a feeling. It transports me back to the feeling of before I was using digital recording, and just how nicely things would come together. And yeah, I mean that session I think sounds tremendous, and there's not a lot going on in there. It's not a lot of heavy lifting. It's because of how sort of magical and analog the recording system sounds. I mean, Luna, especially when you have the Studer and you can play with the different tape formulas and tape speed and the elevation and kind of nerd out on that stuff. It feels very familiar. It kind of gives me chills. It makes me feel kind of makes me fall in love with the sound of records again.
Yeah, it's a very special thing. In your previous answer, I heard you mentioned the Neve summing again. I'd be curious to know, so again, for people to be able to project when they're trying to listen to what it does, how would you describe in sensory word what the Neve summing does in Luna to your sound?
Well, it has the warmth and the transformer sound of Neve. It kind of glues things together. It just adds a richness and a texture and a depth to it that, a console in a DAW up until this point it's been a kind of a passive sound. It's not really a sound. I mean, the only sound we really get out of a mix console sort of architecture in a DAW is the sound of dither and the way it truncates and manages things. It's not really a tone. And having the Neve in there, it gives you that tone. And using all that summing and that Neve sound on the mix bus, my processing has to work less hard because the Neve is creating color and gluing things together. It's just an easier sound. Honestly, I've been mixing in Luna a lot, and it's just so much faster, not only because the workflow is simpler and intuitive, but because of the sound of it, I'm having to think of less things to do to get the sound I'm after. I think most of the time, what we're chasing is the sounds of the records of the past that we love, and trying to interpret them and display them in a modern sensibility. And this kind of just puts a little bit more of it at your fingertips and makes it easier.
For those of you who have an Apollo, I really recommend you download the session. And the thing, if you really want to get the vibe for what this can do for you, is you bypass all the tapes, and then you come to the input section, and you go here and you bypass all the Neves and listen before and after, and you will feel the difference, and you will start recognizing that sound from records you know. Let me show you an example of having all the tape and all the Neve summing on, and then the same exact session of the song with all the tape and all the Neve summing off. Obviously, this is not the highest quality listening environment. You're listening through your browser. I strongly recommend that you download the session and try it for yourself, but at least I can show you how to do it. Also, I can try and point you towards the interesting parts. Listen to the snare in its position. Like, how does it feel? Does it feel real and kind of like a documentary, or does it feel more like a movie, a little pushback? Listen to the bass and the bass drum together, and then listen to the shine on the vocals and the overall feeling, glue, the impression of it. So this is the chorus with all the goodies on.
The wine of Lebanon, the wine of Lebanon. What's left when harvest tugs upon her yoke?
All right. Now I'm going to turn all the tape off in the session, and I'm going to turn off all the Neve summers in the whole session.
The wine of Lebanon, the wine of Lebanon. What's left when harvest tugs upon her yoke?
It's pretty wild. What do you think, Jacquire?
Doesn't sound bad, but it doesn't give me the wonderful feeling that that all that tape and Neve summing, all the harmonics and transient gluing and low end and focus it gives it. That's the thing, it's like in a real dynamic section. I mean, digital recording is, it's kind of one to one. Tape and Neve, the louder something gets, the more it kind of compresses it and controls the transient. So, the clarity and dynamics off of tape are reduced. The clarity is there, but as things get louder, it sort of softens it and turns it down in a way, not necessarily volume-wise, but transient energy. And so
Absolutely.
it makes it feel it's more controlled. And you need to use less compression and just, all the other things that we sort of wrestle with.
I noticed you only used three. You use very, very few reverbs in there. You have 3 for the vocals. You have 1 reverb, which is the chambers, the phenomenal chambers. This guy, which I love very much so. And then Echoplex. And then you're using the Santoys microshift to do the H3000, and that's about it. Everything else is got the natural tone of the room. Is that on purpose, or was it part of the thing? Tell me about that, because the whole session is basically 3 or 4 reverbs for 50 tracks.
Yeah, I mean, it is very on purpose. It's a large room. It's not. There's a feeling of space in that room. It's not like terribly ambient, though. There's not like a long reverb tail, but and the quality of. I mean, part of it is there's really cool effects on the guitars coming through the amp. and then sort of the piano part, it's kind of swirling at times, and then the way that there's some pedals and stuff on the keyboards on the Juno. So there's a lot of sounds that we're creating on the floor as inputs that already have a lot of texture and depth. And with the room mics, I didn't really feel like I needed to add a lot. And it's also, it is a little bit of more of a classic sound that I was going for. It's like this classic modern thing. And in a classic studio, you might be able to grab one or two chambers. If you're at Capitol Records, you might be able to use one or two of the chambers because the other rooms were using the other ones. You didn't have tons of effects to use, so you made the most of what you had. I mean, that's part of it. The primary thing was that we were creating the sounds that created the dimension and space from the source. And like the strings, it's like they're mic'd ambiently as well. And the close mics are there for the focus and to be able to manage the balance, but the general feeling of space is you're getting from the room mics, and that's sort of the general approach. And the other thing I will say is that the people that can download the session and listen to it, I mean, solo up the piano. Solo up the drums. You will hear the other instruments. You will hear the other instruments in the drum mics. So so that also gives you that spill and leakage, gives you that sense of dimension. So I'm not having to fabricate a bunch of it either.
Yeah, I think that is the best thing for everyone to do. Download the session. It is such a gift to have. Download the session, bypass all the plugins, and listen to the raw tracks. And that's how you can learn how the balance came together. And then when you have the plugins or you can use the demos, you can really get the vibe on how Jacquire built this mix. And I think that is the whole point of this talk, is to give you guys the energy and the motivation to go check it out for yourself. There's so much you can learn from this session. The gain staging, the microphone placements. Also, in the session, there's a document that shows you the layout. You can see pictures of the studio. There's actually Jacquire's microphone layout with what microphone he used, through what preamp, through what compressor, and everything. Everything's in there. And for all the Unison preamps that he used, they're still in the session, so you can actually see all the settings. This is the closest thing to being there that you can have. And I think that's pretty awesome. And it's really great of Universal Audio to have done this. And it's really amazing that Luna can actually do this, keep the original settings inside the session. So I think this is... Thank you so much, Jacquire, for taking the time to come discuss this with us at GearFest 2020, the virtual GearFest. I love this song. I think it's great. It's a beautiful showcase of both the music, the technology, and the vision. There's a music video of this, and I think after the mix, Pete Lyman mastered it, and there's actually a full Spotify version available and a full video available, correct?
Yes, there is, yeah. You get to see all the behind the scenes kind of the environment that we're in, and yeah, it's nice because you can see some of the mic placements, you can see the interaction, and yeah, I just want to reiterate that one of the things that I was particularly excited about this, well, two things, is the forensic ability to look at what the inputs are. You plug the same microphone in. Now, obviously, you don't have the same source, but plug the same microphone in, and you can get a sense of how those settings work with that microphone, and then. So there's that ability, but then also for some recordists that have maybe not had as much experience recording an ensemble live, to hear what is acceptable, and actually not just acceptable but really useful leakage, and how it does create the dimension, because you can listen to the sound of the drums, but if you turn off the piano and some of the other instrumentation where there is a little bit of the drum sound in there, you'll hear how it changes and influences the drum picture. Yep. So those things are particularly exciting for me as well.
I think the whole thing is awesome. It's really beautiful. So thanks a lot for lending yourself to the exercise, and thanks for your time today. And I'll see you on the producer panel.
All right, man. Sounds good.
All right. Cheers.
The online GearFest sale starts now with big deals on all your favorite gear. Now through June 30th, we're rocking huge savings on demos and B-stocks, plus instant savings and special buys during Sweetwater's biggest event of the year. Find event details, live stream info, workshops, and more at sweetwater.com/GearFest.
So Jacquire and Fab, and we want to thank those guys. I mean, where besides GearFest would you ever have an opportunity to go inside a session like that and really get a chance to learn from the guys who are doing the work that you're hearing out there in the world? So cool. And speaking of only at GearFest, we're sitting down today with Chuck Surack, the founder and CEO of Sweetwater. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Mitch. I'm just honored to be here.
Well, we need to start one thing first here.
Okay.
Safety first.
Safety first. Okay, I got it.
All right. Yep, we're good.
6 feet. Good. All right.
Shouldn't joke about it, but things are loosening up a little bit here in Indiana, and we hope that soon we can have everybody back in person and do all this, because this has been a little bit different GearFest than past years.
Yeah, it's been a lot different. And in GearFest past, for the last 17 years, I've tried to stand at the front door and meet as many customers as I can and shake their hands. And
right.
It's definitely disappointing that we can't have people on our campus this weekend. On the other hand, it's really cool that we're able to take this across the whole country, across the whole world. I saw yesterday there was something like 80,000 different people had tuned into our website. So
wow.
It's pretty amazing.
Now I'm nervous. So, like last year, there were, I think, 17,000 people, right? We're at GearFest in the 2 days. Doesn't your hand get sore? Doesn't it? I mean,
no.
All day long?
It is so cool. I mean, how
Yeah,
can you not
right.
be in my shoes and not be thankful? Just thankful that the customers come and they want to hang out with the folks at Sweetwater and the presenters, and I'm just honored to stand at the front door, and I'd do it for 5 days if I could.
Right, yeah, so cool. So cool to get to talk to everyone.
You know, and speaking of GearFest, this is really amazing when you think about it. The community that you and I are in, that all of our employees are in, all of the customers that are watching, and then all the presenters. And those presenters all donate their time, they spend time with us because they want to care, they want to give back. And that's an amazing thing, and I'm just thankful that we're able to do it at Sweetwater. It's never been done before. 2 solid days of the best giving back just out of the goodness of their heart to help others. That's cool.
It is amazing. I remember I think I was at the very first GearFest. This is the 19th one that Sweetwater has done. I was with EQ magazine at the time, and I came in and was one of the presenters, actually. And then when I returned to Sweetwater, of course, I became part of the work here. But I've always been curious, where did the idea for those original GearFests come from?
You know, I don't know who had the idea initially, but, you know, we are in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and especially in those early days, we didn't have a lot of people come to see us. And we were mainly doing business on the telephone and through mail order, as we called it back then. And we wanted a way to give back to our local and regional customers. And so our very first GearFest was very humble, as you can imagine.
Right.
And we invited customers from a several-hour radius to come see us, and there were a few hundred, maybe nearly 1,000, but it's grown steadily every year since.
Yeah, it's been crazy the way it's exploded. And man, I can only imagine next year. Assuming we're in person, I bet there's probably going to be an online component as well. It just gets bigger and better every year.
Yeah, I hope we can do both next year, because there really is something about being on the campus and being able to shake hands and see each other. But I also love now that we've been able to take it across the country and across the world.
Yeah, I got a text this morning from somebody in India who was watching it and enjoying the live stream and things. So that's so cool.
I've stood at the front door for many years, as I mentioned. In the last couple of years, I've had a couple come up to me, and they tell me they're here, and I ask them where they're from, and they say, New Zealand. I said, New Zealand? And what else are you going to do while you're in the United States? Oh, nothing. We came here just for GearFest because there's nothing like this in New Zealand.
Wow.
And I'm telling them, well, we have the Great Lakes, we have the Statue of Liberty, a whole bunch of other things they can see while they're here. I hope they still continue to come and just don't log in from home going forward.
Right. So I think 2 of the questions, I see them coming up on the screen here that viewers are sending in, and of course they were on my list as well. Tell us about, why did you start Sweetwater? Where did the company come from? And probably the main question we get asked over and over again, where'd the name come from?
Well, the name's the harder part, but the beginning of the story is I went on the road as a musician. I play saxophone and keyboards. Played all over the country, and this is the late 70s. And after 5 years on the road, having a lot of fun, but not making a lot of money and living out of suitcases and that sort of thing, came home and started a recording studio very humbly with my VW bus. It was the only thing that my parents had given me. Yeah, the VW bus right there. It wasn't that nice. Mine was pretty rusted.
But bigger, I bet.
In fact, it was bigger. My mom and dad gave me that bus when I was a junior in high school, and the only reason I got it is my mom had wrecked it into a telephone pole. And it had a big V in the front, so I filled it with 2 gallons of Bondo, and then I put headlights on it from Tractor Supply that looked like bug eyes, and then I spray painted it with 99-cent cans of actually blue spray paint from Kmart.
I've never heard that story.
Yeah, that's what I used for going to school, junior and senior high school, and what I used on the road for several years. And after being on the road, I came home with that bus, and I needed to do something for a job, and so I had a little bit of recording equipment that I had acquired on the road, and I would pull the bus alongside the church, the school, the nightclub, run 100 feet or 200 feet of microphone cables in, and I would mic up the band or the choir or the preacher, whatever it was. And then I'd sit in the bus with my headphones and the 4-track reel-to-reel tape recorder and edit them and record them and just make them sound as good as they can. And I would take those very, very early recordings to my humble 12 by 55 mobile home. And that's where I would edit them and put compression on them and that sort of thing.
Right.
And interesting listening to BT a little bit earlier today, talking about the smell of tape.
Right.
Oh, I remember that so clearly in my early days. You could walk into a recording studio and tell if they were an Ampex studio or a 3M studio or a Bassist studio. You can't walk into a studio today and go, hey, that's a Pro Tools smelling studio or a Digital Performer or Logic studio. Right. It just doesn't smell the same. But anyway, after starting the recording studio, I had a friend that owned a music store here in Fort Wayne. Mm-hmm. And he invited me to go to the NAMM show in Chicago. The NAMM show used to have their big show in Chicago, and NAMM stands for National Association of Music Merchants. And I saw a prototype of the Kurzweil K250. And it was the first synthesizer that played back digital recordings of other instruments. Mm-hmm. Now today we do that on our iPads and iPhones and all those sorts of things, but in the 80s that was really unheard of. We had lots of synthesizers, electric pianos, organs, but we didn't have anything that played back digital recordings of other instruments. And I thought, when I saw that machine, boy, if I could have that in my own studio, I had since moved to a little bit bigger studio, that at the end of all my recording sessions, I could ask my customers, would you like to hear your music with a 50-voice choir or a 45-piece string section or an upright bass? And so I bought a very, very early version of that Kurzweil K250. It was expensive. I sold the grand piano I had to buy that, plus put some more money with it. But I quickly reverse engineered how it worked, designed my own sounds for it, helped with another friend. We wrote some new software for it, and we kind of became friends with other Kurzweil owners around the country, around the world actually. And those friends were really famous musicians like Stevie Wonder and Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton and Bob James. And I started helping them with their equipment, with new software, new sounds. They started using my sounds on their records. And before long, my business changed from being just a recording studio to now I'm helping my friends with their Kurzweils. And then it sort of expanded from there. They wanted music software. Well, I knew how to do that because I was already doing it in my studio. Then they wanted other recording equipment, so I became a dealer for recording equipment. 1990, I turned around and I now had 5 people operating out of my home, coming all hours of the day, and I said enough was enough. So we built our first commercial building, 5,000 square feet, and you fast forward from 1990 until today, we've grown to nearly 1 million square feet. We have 1,800 employees here. We have 5 million customers around the world, and I'm just humbled each and every day. It's pretty amazing.
It is crazy.
Yeah.
It is crazy. So the second part of the question was, where'd the name come from?
Oh, I was trying to avoid that part of the question. So I'm out in the country in my 12 by 55 mobile home, and a lot of farmers around me, and a lot of the farms have little signs by their farms, you know, Rolling Meadow Estates, Steve's Acreage, that sort of thing. And I had moved into Fort Wayne to a very small 1,000 square foot house, but that's where my first real recording studio was. And I added on about a 2-car garage, and I needed a sign that I could put in front of the property that my customers could find me, that would be big enough they could find me, but small enough that I wouldn't raise the ire of the local zoning officials, because that house was still in a residential neighborhood.
Right.
The next place over was commercial or business, but my house was still residential. And I had a little creek in the backyard of my 2 acres of property, and I thought, oh, that's kind of sweet, Sweetwater. And I could have named it, you know, Chuck's Recording Studio or a whole bunch of other things, but Sweetwater stuck. Uh-huh. And I've heard of Sweetwater, Texas, and Sweetwater, Tennessee, and Sweetwater the band, and the bed and breakfast, and Sweetwater Hall out west. And fortunately, we registered Sweetwater.com early, and it's stuck and done really, really well. I've asked every marketing person who's ever worked for us to come up with a better story, but that's the truth. I just pulled it out of the air.
That's the real story.
That's the real story.
Well, you heard it here at GearFest.
Yes.
Only at GearFest. So tell us what you were doing in those early days in the studio. Were you doing jingles? Were you doing albums? What kind of work were you doing?
Anything I could get to keep the doors open.
Right. So it was a studio.
It was a studio. And I will tell you, we did do a lot of jingles. That's back when jingles were a big thing. And I did a lot of them myself in the studio. I'd help write them and produce them. But I also had another jingle company in Fort Wayne that did all the recordings with us. And so between the two, we did lots of that. We did lots of custom albums, a lot of Christian albums. We became kind of popular for a while with folks out of Mexico. We had a couple big hits down there, and quickly it was a trend. And so Mexican bands were coming up to see us in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And just anything we could do to keep the doors open.
Right, right. So were you, as you'd hand somebody their master tape, were you giving them a bag of candy with it? Or where did that idea come from?
Oh, great question. No, the candy came later. When we started actually sending products, mail orders to customers. Right. It was just a sweet way to say thank you. Just wanted to do something a little bit extra, a little bit different.
Right, right. That was actually a viewer question. I can't take credit for that.
Yeah, I wish I had done candy in those early recording studios. That'd have been a good idea.
Yeah, right, right. So you know, these days when someone starts a company, they go and they try to get financing and they try to get backers and investors and all that kind of stuff. But you kind of started, bootstrapped yourself up from with, like you said, with your VW bus. How did you learn to do all that you do and learn how to run a business and how to record and I mean everything that you've done through the course of your time in the industry?
You know, I look back now, I'm dumbfounded myself. I'm thinking, how in the world did I learn? But I've always been a fast learner. I didn't have maybe formal education that most of our listeners do. I finished high school and went on the road right away as a musician. But I do learn quickly, and so I read a lot, and this is long before the internet was around. I would read just inches and inches of magazines and books literally every day. One of the few classes I took in school that was really, really important to me was speed reading. So I read really fast, a lot of interest, but I've just been self-taught in everything, really.
Right, wow, that's amazing. Now, we have a question from a viewer that actually was on my list here to ask you because I think it's kind of an interesting development as well. So you had the original studio. Today, Sweetwater Studios is still an integral part of what we do here. They're asking, what about Sweetwater Studio today? How does that journey continue?
Sure. We have a great studio today. It was designed by Russ Berger. We have 3 different rooms. They're beautiful. We can do all kinds of stuff in them. They stand alone. They're their own business, so they do all kinds of albums for other people. We still do an occasional jingle, even though they're not as popular as they used to be. But then we also use them for master classes and workshops, and we'll bring someone famous or semi-famous or has some, you know, real talent, and then invite our customers in to spend time with them. Our sales engineers get to come in and try out speakers and microphones and compressors in a real-world environment, and it's just a great, great workplace to go along with the whole Sweetwater company.
Right, right. So we have some questions coming up here, and one of them is, again, something I had on my list here, is we have a very distinct company motto that I hear from you all the time, and when the first minute an employee comes through the door, they're told this sentence, and what is that sentence, and what does it mean to you?
I don't know what the sentence is. No. The sentence is always, always do the right thing.
Right.
And to me, it's so simple. Just treat people the way you would want to be treated. It's a pretty simple concept, really, but I just firmly believe that we all deserve respect. We should give each other respect and just treat people the way you'd want to be treated. And by being open and transparent like that, it's really easy to do great business and do, as I say, great people. And, you know, you don't always know the right answers, but you can always find a way to do the right thing for the customer and for each other, for themselves. So.
Right, right. I've sat in on some of you sit in when an employee's hired and their first couple days, you actually do a kind of a meet and greet with them and talk about the company philosophy and introduce yourself and things. And I know that you talk about some of the things we do to exemplify that, always do the right thing, you know, whether it's buying someone a pay for their taxi to come and pick up, you know, whatever it might be. Can you give us an idea of some of the kind of things that you'll do to do the right thing?
So we hire the very, very best people we can hire. We interview really hard. We check references. And I know that I've got great people on our staff. Once I have great people on our staff, I want to empower them. I never, ever, ever want to hear at Sweetwater, I need to check with the manager, like you hear at a lot of other retail places. Our people are empowered to do whatever it takes. And I mean that, from a receptionist to a shipping person and everywhere in between. If that means paying for an Uber ride, if that means paying for lunch or replacing the guitar or replacing the keyboard, everyone is not only empowered, they're encouraged to do that, to do the right thing. They'll get in more trouble for not doing something than they would for doing. If they do a little too much, so what? It comes back and it's the right thing, and I'm fine with that.
Right.
What would really frustrate me is if we put customers through a bunch of red tape trying to get some approvals. I just never want to do that. We just do the right thing.
Right. I love that you tell people you can always play the Chuck card, and I think you should have a Chuck card that you give every employee.
Ooh, that's a good idea. Yeah, the Chuck card is that everyone that sat through one of those meetings has heard me talk about that. And if anyone ever thinks they're getting in trouble because they've done too much for a customer, just pull the Chuck card. Chuck says, and that's good enough for me.
Yeah. Right on, right on. So you mentioned hiring the best of the best for employees, and I meet a lot of the employees as they come, prospective employees as they're coming in, and we say hello. What is it that you look for in an employee? I mean, we're always hiring here at Sweetwater. We're just growing so fast.
We want people that really are great people to start with, just good people. You know, I'm very fortunate that I get to come to work every day, and I'm inspired. I'm just inspired. I mean that, of the level of quality of folks. Yeah, they technically have degrees and Dove Awards and Grammy Awards and doctorates and had their own businesses and all that. But beyond all that, they're just good people. So I want people that are going to treat each other, both employees and their families, and of course our customers and guests, well, and then they have to be technically good. You know, they've got to have their A game together all the time. But as long as they're trying hard and got their A game and treating people well, they'll do great at Sweetwater. Right. I believe everyone is either adding credibility or taking credibility away from our company. And so we always want people to add credibility to that Sweetwater brand. We've worked so hard to develop the brand we have, and people have got to add to the quality, not take away from it.
Right, that's awesome. So there's some more viewer questions coming in, and let me ask it this way. I remember the building in 1992, which was a little white building in a gravel parking lot, kind of in the middle of a cornfield, and things are a little different today. The campus is growing and still growing, and we just did a huge addition here. Do you expect at some point that we'll outgrow this campus? Are we going to have more retail stores around the country, or how does what does your future vision say about that?
Whew, that's a lot of questions.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, the building today, or the buildings, I should say, it just blow my mind every day. I started very humbly, and to think that through great employees and great customers that we've been able to grow this and continue to grow is just, almost brings me to tears. I'm just so thankful, so blessed. We have nearly 1 million square feet today. We're still adding on. We just opened a brand new, nearly 500,000 square foot distribution center and quickly decided it wasn't big enough. So we broke ground 2 weeks ago on another 50,000 square feet to add on to that. We've got a brand new store coming later this year that'll be one of the nicest superstores of the whole world, frankly. We're going to have all kinds of cool stuff, and a little sneak preview. We'll have band instruments. People keep asking me when are we going to have saxophones and trumpets and clarinets. We'll have those early next year. An additional expansion to our sales department. We'll have room for more than 1,100 sales engineers going forward.
Wow.
So we think we're going to grow for a long, long time. This year, next year, pretty soon, we'll probably be at about $1 billion in sales. There's nothing magical about $1 billion other than it's a B. It's a big number, right? I've never been driven by the dollars. I've been driven by doing the right thing for our customers, and the business will come and the referrals will come. But it's $1 billion. And our industry, if you count the music instruments and the overhead speakers and amplifiers, is about 20 billion. So even though we're number one online, we sell more equipment online than anyone else, we still really only have 1/20th of the US business. And that's before we talk about going to Canada or Mexico, South America, or even over the water. So I think there's a lot of business in the US. So we'll continue to do more of what we're doing for a long, long time.
Right. Well, some viewer is anticipating my next question, actually. You mentioned getting up to like 1,100 sales engineers. Tell us where the idea for sales engineer came from, because you're the original sales engineer, right? Are you employee number one?
Oh man, that's a tough question. I don't know why. Honest to goodness, my employee badge, if I log into things around here, I'm number 13. I don't know where the first 12 are, but I thought I was here first. But somehow when the IT guys got together, they slipped me a 13. I don't know why, but anyway. It was a long time ago. And when we first started, I remember that second and that third and that fourth sales engineers we started, we just wanted to make sure we were providing good advice all the time. And it's easy to just say whatever you want, but I wanted to tell the truth to the customers. And I wasn't worried. I really wasn't worried about making the sale. I was worried about helping my customers, help my friends, do the right stuff. And so we've always been involved. We used to have a breakfast at one of the restaurants here in town. That was our first sales meetings.
Right.
And now they go through 13 weeks, 8 hours a day, 300 classes taught by 80 different teachers before they ever talk to a customer. That's the commitment we make in our sales engineers, because I want them to add to the brand. I want them to give good information to our customers. And then after that, they go through 2 sales meetings a week for the rest of their career here. So we're always sharpening our knife, sharpening our tools, and trying to get better to make sure we give great advice to our customers.
Right. I teach some of those RU classes, a couple of them, and you have to be on your toes, because like you said, the people coming in are really sharp, and they're asking those questions, and you got to answer them.
That's right. It's true.
So I got to stay on top of the game myself, just to keep a little bit ahead of them. And one of the things that's I think really fun and really valuable about working at Sweetwater, and I'm kind of talking from a career standpoint because so many people ask about it, is you really take care of employees. I mean, it's clear that you really care about the people that are here and the families, and we have so many really cool amenities in this building and things, and I think sometimes people see those and wonder why. Why don't you just have a desk for somebody and send them home at the end of the night?
Well, truly, because all of the people here are good people. Most of them are really good friends. It's a family-run business. My wife and I still own it 100%. We have no other shareholders. We, very, very fortunate position, and we do lots of fun things. Every baby that's born, my wife, used to be my wife and myself, but I'm kind of busy, so she's been buying baby gifts and we have babies like every week being born, and they'll get gifts from Kohl's and Target and that sort of thing. And we do concerts and sporting events, and I know people spend a lot of time at work, and so we want to make sure that we give back to the employees. I'm thankful. I'm just really thankful to have great people, and I want to give back to them and support them and their families, not just them, because the whole family is engaged when the spouse is working at Sweetwater. And I just think it's really, really important to treat people the way I'd want to be treated.
Right, and those amenities also make it easy for me as an employee to stay focused, to be able to do my job and not have to worry about a lot of distractions and things. I can come in and you know, there are ways to have some of the daily chores handled for you, and there's a diner here, and you know, I mean, we pay for our lunch, but still, there's a diner here. I don't have to spend 15 minutes driving off campus and drive back and have a short lunch. I can sit down with the other employees and talk about guitars. Is really what happens.
Yeah, I love that we have that cafeteria. And I hate to call it a cafeteria because it's really good quality food.
Right.
But the community that happens, it is so amazing to me to see folks from the warehouse sitting with the salespeople, or the marketing folks sitting with the people from the technical support area, and it really is a great community. Or when we have a snow day, which we don't have a lot of them, but we have a snow day, they can't go to school, but somehow mom and the kids can come in and have lunch with dad, which I think is just awesome.
Right,
awesome.
right.
I love being able to get my hair cut here. I don't have to leave the building and get a haircut. Or how about having a free doctor and a free nurse?
That is crazy.
That everyone in the company and families get access to a free doctor and a free nurse. I love being able to give back and do that.
Right. That's part of the benefit of the company having grown
Absolutely.
so large, but it's also part of, we have 2,000 people on campus, and you got to take care of them, right?
Absolutely.
So that's awesome, yeah, and we all really appreciate that. So we've got a viewer question that just came in. What's your favorite GearFest memory?
Ooh. My favorite. These are great questions. We should just let the
viewers.
Yeah, why are you here, Mitch?
You know,
honest to goodness, I really do love standing at the front door and hearing the personal stories from our customers. And they'll tell me they've done business with us for 10 years and 20 years and 30 years. They'll bring their son or their grandson that they're teaching to play guitar or keyboard. That's unbelievable. I'll tell you, one of the highlights over the last few years is being able to bring my friend Bruce Swedien to Fort Wayne. Bruce, a very, very famous engineer, producer, one of the best, you know, from Michael Jackson's biggest hits to, I could go on and on with hits, but not just Bruce. I mean, all the famous and very successful people that have come here and supported us. And I would say the other thing is just the accolades that our company gets, and maybe even more importantly, our employees get from our guests, from our vendors, from those speakers. They all just rave about doing business with Sweetwater, and that's just incredibly humbling and rewarding.
Right. So let's, there's the whole business side of things and the Sweetwater side of things, but there's also the Chuck side of things.
Uh-oh.
So you started as a musician.
I did.
But you were an entrepreneur before that. I mean, you're a serial entrepreneur at this point, right?
Well, when I started, they didn't use the word entrepreneur. I don't think it had been invented yet.
Right.
But my first job at age 5 is I made potholders, you know, where you put the loops in the frame and go back and forth. Well, I grew up in a little town in southern Ohio called Waverly, about an hour south of Columbus, Ohio. And I started making potholders 15 cents a piece, 2 for a quarter. And I sold thousands and thousands, literally, of potholders in my little hometown. Then I delivered newspapers. Back then, most of my friends had 40 newspapers. I figured out if you delivered to apartment complexes and senior citizen homes, they were closer together and smaller, you could cover more ground. My paper route was 340 papers a day, yeah. And it kind of went on and on. I had a lawnmower business where I had 14 young men working for me cutting grass. I bought all the lawnmowers at age 14 and doing that. But what really set me up for life, of course, is Boy Scouts. And Boy Scouts may not be so popular today, but it gave me a great grounding to do everything that I've done personally and professionally. And the Boy Scout law says that a Boy Scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, clean, brave, and reverent.
Nice.
Amazing principle, thank you. Amazing principles to live by personally, amazing principles to live by professionally.
Right.
And, you know, again, entrepreneur wasn't written or spelled in those early days, but I think all those early tools, the potholders, the newspaper routes, the lawnmower route, the Boy Scouts set me up to just really be fortunate and successful in my adult life.
All right, so were you an Eagle Scout?
Oh, Mitch, one of my 2 failures in life. If you came to Sweetwater and you got to see the VW bus that's out front, my Boy Scout uniform is there, and I have every honor and award up to Eagle Scout.
Yeah.
And had all the required merit badge, everything you needed to do, but I had to do one more little, what they call an Eagle project, which would be build some park benches, clean up trash on the road, something, you know, like that. And about age 14, I met my first girlfriend, and my Boy Scout career went in the tubes. And thank you for asking that question. So there we go.
We got to get deep into the dirt here.
That's right. Yeah. I've shared all kinds of cool stuff today.
Yeah, right on. So the question again from a viewer, and since we're talking about your early time, what instruments do you play, and how did you get started actually playing music?
I play saxophone and keyboards and flute, and I can even play trumpet and drum. I can play everything but a guitar. I barely know how to play I do know how to play 3 or 4 chords. So I guess I could play a couple songs, but I've played drums in a real band. I play saxophone is really my main instrument. In 5th grade, lots of young people got to play instruments back then. I wanted to play trombone. And my dad says, you don't want to play trombone, you want to play saxophone. I said, no, Dad, I want to play trombone. I didn't even hardly know what a saxophone was. And he says, no, trombone players never get the solos. A saxophone player, you get a solo. What does that mean to a fifth grader? I don't know, but you have to understand he was an accordion player. So I think he was wanting to do anything other than accordion, and I think he was living vicariously through me to play saxophone. So he took me to a pawn shop in fifth grade, and I got a saxophone, and never took a lesson on it, and got good enough that I could play professionally, and I just love playing it. I just love the sound. It's the closest instrument there is to a voice.
Right.
And it sings when you play it.
Right. I was a trombone player, so I'm mildly offended.
Oh, sorry, I did not mean to offend you.
So did you get it? You mentioned you went on the road, but did you get into bands during high school? How did you start actually getting out there and playing?
You know, I had a really inspirational teacher in 8th grade. He happened to be the professional tuba player in our orchestra, but he also played tuba and upright bass at a pizza place here in town, a Dixieland band, and he was just absolutely inspirational. And I walked in one day at lunchtime, and he was playing back a recording, and he asked me, what that was, and I said, well, it's really clear, it's a trumpet. He says, nope, ask again. I said, no, I know what a trumpet sounds like. And he proceeded to show me, and again, he was a tuba player, low brass, he played, bass trombone, that sort of thing. He had taken a trombone and played on an analog reel-to-reel tape recorder at 3 3/4, and then sped it up to 7 1/2. And when he sped it up an octave, and it sounded like a trumpet.
Right.
And so that just took me on the whole idea of recording, and I bought all kinds of arranging books and just everything I could do to learn to be a better musician. And I played a lot of different instruments in high school. I played bass clarinet, I played some oboe and bassoon and in the orchestra and that sort of thing. And I've just been inspired by all kinds of music, and really am self-taught. And learning to play all those things.
Did you play on the early sessions you were doing in your studio, or were you just doing the engineering?
No, I did both. If there was room for a saxophone, I clearly would put a saxophone on it. And I did play in a lot of bands, as you mentioned or asked about, in high school. My first band was a band that we did just James Brown music. And of course, there's always room for a saxophone player in James Brown's music. Yeah.
Sure. What other types of music were you listening to, and what were you playing in those days?
Mainly it was top 40 or popular music. And of course, when I grew up, there's a lot of disco. So it would be KC and the Sunshine Band and the Ohio Players and Earth, Wind, and Fire and that sort of thing.
We got Nile Rodgers coming up
later
today.
I know, I can't wait. I love Nile Rodgers. I've been a fan of Nile for a long, long time.
Amazing. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
That's okay. But I love all styles of music. I really do. If you got in my car today or listen to my XM presets, it ranges, as long as it's done well. I love all kinds of music.
So when you were touring with bands, what kind of music were you playing?
Yeah, back in those days, we had nightclubs and restaurants you could play 6 nights a week. It usually was Monday night through Saturday night, and we played all over the country, almost every state in the continental U.S., and generally it was top 40 or popular music that was on the radio.
Right.
Now today I play in a 9-piece R&B soul band called the Sweetwater All-Stars.
Right.
So we do R&B, soul kind of music, and then I also play in a small trio called Primetime, and we play all kinds of standards and a bunch of jazz and just basically #1 hits. And I love the juxtaposition of both of the bands, so different but yet so much fun.
Right. The Primetime band is really fascinating. I've seen you guys play a bunch of times. And how many songs do you guys have in your catalog?
Oh, I don't know, 650, 700.
How is that possible?
We use a lot of technology. So, I'm playing saxophone and flute and singing and some keyboards, and have another fellow that works here at Sweetwater, plays trumpet and trombone and keyboards and sings. And then we have an amazing female vocalist. And then we have a digital performer doing our background tracks. So it's doing our drums, bass, guitar stuff. It's all automated, so at the beginning of the night, I load everything in from Digital Performer, and then I never touch the computer again. I do everything from my Kurzweil keyboard, and I can call up different songs, different rhythm sections, basically. And it will not only do the drums and bass and some of the extra parts like that, but it also does all the effects and harmony, and we have moving videos. So when we do the Andrews Sisters, Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy, we'll have a video of the Andrews Sisters playing in the background with us, and it's just a lot of fun.
Right.
We get to mix it up and do all kinds of genres of music.
Right. You guys have a real knack for not making it about the technology, though. It's like you're going to see a band. It's not like I'm watching somebody push a button.
Yeah, that's partly why I hide all the technology, and we want to play as much live as we can, and we are playing our instruments, our main instruments live.
Right.
We're just not doing the drums, and we're not doing the bass, and sometimes the guitar parts. But yeah, we've been doing it for, 22, 23 years now with the same people, and it's really a lot of fun.
Right, yeah, you never know walking down the hall that you weren't hearing a band play. You guys do a great job. It's always fun to see you.
Thank you.
So the opposite side of that coin is the All-Stars. Tell us a little bit about why you started that band. You mentioned that it's a soul R&B band. Tell us more about it.
Well, it's made up of all Sweetwater employees, and as everyone probably knows that watches anything we do at Sweetwater, there's some real talent here. And to be able to have just world-class musicians and to play music that's just fun and easy to listen to, it's a true inspiration for all of us. All of us could play in a lot of different bands, but coming together with that level of talent and being able to play with each other, but also to be able to back the various artists that come to Sweetwater. Clearly in previous GearFest, we've done a concert every year, and we're getting to play with the biggest of the biggest names, and it's very humbling and a lot of fun. Great musicianship.
Right.
That's the whole reason I got in the business, to do music, not to own a music company, right?
Yeah, right.
So it's a great release from my day job of running the big company.
Right. Yeah, you guys have actually gotten to play with, if I can let the cat out of the bag, your favorite band.
Oh, my favorite. There's a lot of bands, but I do love the Tower Power guys. I've been following them for a long time. I'm friends with all the folks in the band. And to think about a band that's been going for 51, 52 years now, there's only a few that have gone that long. And to be relevant still today is pretty amazing. I just like their sound and their type of music. But I like any music that's done really well.
Right. We had an incredible workshop yesterday with Dave Garibaldi on the drums. I mean, man, I could just listen to that guy play all day. Just drums. I don't need anything else.
He is a monster of a monster of a monster, and he's just adored by anybody that knows anything about drums.
Right. So a question from a viewer. Do employees jam on campus? Is it that kind of an environment where people can pick up an instrument and play?
Well, we have a lot of places on our campus where you can play, whether it's the theater that we're actually broadcasting out of today or the Crescendo Cafe. A lot of the employees here get access to the recording studios, that sort of thing. But I would tell you most of the music ends up happening at their homes and their garages. Sure. And it is a great community. You want to find a bass player or a guitar player or a drummer, there's 1,800 people here, and 1,500 of them are musicians. So it's not hard finding other great musicians to jam or play with. The other interesting thing is the music in our community is huge. Because we've brought so many people to Fort Wayne, there's more live music in Fort Wayne than virtually any other city this size. Whether it's nightclubs, which we closed a few months ago, but they're starting to open up again right now, or churches and schools, and it's really inspirational to see all the great music going on around our community.
Right. One of my favorite things is the Live at Lunch series, which you mentioned the Crescendo and the Downbeat Diner. There's the coffee area, and there's a stage there, and at lunch either musicians who are coming through or who are booked will come in and play a set. I got to play a set there myself, and we see a lot of employees get up there and play with their bands, and when they're putting out CDs or when they're releasing their new music, that happens as well.
Yeah, and that's a cool space because we don't serve alcohol there. That wouldn't work so good at work to have a bunch of alcohol around musicians especially, right? But we do have a great coffee bar and ice cream, and what's cool is we have an academy of nearly 1,000 students, and those students make bands also, and they get to play in a real nightclub feeling atmosphere. It feels like a great little jazz club or something, and if they have a chance to play long before they're 18 or 21 years old. So I love being able to give back to those young people too.
Yeah, the Academy, since you bring that up, I mean, that is such a cool thing, bringing the next generation, but not even the next generation. We've got some older folks who are doing some lessons there, and I freely will admit, I'm taking lessons there myself. I don't know if you knew that.
I did not know that.
I'm actually taking some jazz improvisation lessons there with Eric, one of the keyboard instructors, who's just a guru.
Yeah, Eric is great.
And so man, what a tremendous resource for the community and even people in the building. We have
a little, I don't remember what we call it now, but like a little kids music class, a baby class, really little. We had a fellow a couple years ago, 87 years old, never played an instrument in his life, and he wanted to play 3 love songs for his wife. So we taught him how to play guitar and how to do those songs, and he eventually was able to play those songs for his wife.
How cool is that?
It's very amazing, just amazing.
Yeah. And the nice thing is that the way the building is set up here, for people who haven't seen it, there's kind of a mall with the dining area and the coffee shop area, and then there's kind of an arcade, so if families come in, they've got a child or an adult who's taking lessons, the rest of them have something to do.
Absolutely. It's one of the disappointments about us being so far from so many of our customers. I wish they could come in our building and just feel the culture, feel the energy in here. Without fail, anytime someone comes to our building, they go, wow, I had no idea. I wish I could give that to everybody so they could see what it was like.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. So we've got a couple more viewer questions who have come in here. The first is, how does Sweetwater give back to the local community? And I've known you now for 28 years, and I don't think I've ever been anywhere, I've been around someone who's so philanthropic. What drives you to give back so much to the community, and what kinds of things are you doing?
Sure. First off, my wife and I have been incredibly blessed. We've been incredible. I never had any money when I started. I didn't expect to grow into anything like this. And I also know we can't take it with us, right? And I just try and encourage others as well as ourselves to give back, to help others. All of us that are watching this cast today, all of us that are working at Sweetwater, we are very blessed. We got a roof over our head. We're probably getting 3 meals a day, might have a car or 2 and that sort of thing. And not everyone is in that situation. And so I'm always trying to help others, to give back. And, and we're supporting everything from the Boys and Girls Club to Easter Seals Art to Unity Performing Arts Foundation, just, literally millions of dollars a year to help others. I want to encourage them, and I try and encourage our employees. If you don't have the finances, you surely have the time. And so give your talents and your treasures to other people, other organizations, and whether that's the Rescue Mission or Salvation Army, just to make everybody's day a little bit better.
Right. That's awesome. So you mentioned how blessed you are, but I have to say also, you have a backup plan. I saw a photo of you at Christmas time in Florida. What were you doing?
Oh my gosh. I have a lot of friends before the pandemic, but a lot of friends that would play out on the street. I'd see musicians play out on the street.
Right.
And I always thought, I've played in front of 10,000 people. I've played in our recording. That's a great picture. There I am. That's Naples, Florida. And I need the money. As you see, I've raised a few bucks there in my sax, $10 that night for an hour.
Nice.
That's more money than I make playing local gigs sometimes.
Right.
But I stood there and played, and what a real thrill and honor. I was able to play with my daughter also. She's been playing saxophone for a few years. So there we are. We're playing Tequila and I think Over the Rainbow and a couple other fun songs.
How cool is that?
But it's just a fun way to give back, and I play almost every weekend. Get to use a lot of the technology that we sell, and I love being close to that and staying on top of it and understanding it.
Right. So you mentioned your wife Lisa and Adderley, your daughter. Tell us about your family and how they're involved with Sweetwater.
Sure.
And part of things.
Lisa and I have been married 20 years this month, which
Nice.
is a lot of fun. And
Congratulations.
together, thank you. And together we have a daughter, Adderley, who's 13, and she just started working at Sweetwater 2 weeks ago.
Oh yeah.
She's in the cafeteria baking with Stephanie.
Nice.
And she got her first paycheck actually yesterday on Friday. And so she's real excited about her first Sweetwater paycheck. And then I have 2 stepsons, Lisa's boys, that are 29 and 26. And they also work in the company back in the distribution center and leadership positions and doing really well. And our oldest got married about 3.5 years ago and had our first grandchild last September. So
congratulations.
It's a great life. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no doubt. I think it's so cool, and people probably don't see this from the outside because Sweetwater has gotten big, but it's not a big faceless corporation. I mean, you are the face of Sweetwater.
Yeah, whether you like it or not, I am the face of Sweetwater. It really is. I said earlier, being a family business, I truly love the people that work here. I love being here. I'm here every day. Short of a quick vacation or something, there's nothing more important for me to be here early, be here late, and I love being able to be with our employees. I love talking to customers. I love that we're getting questions from customers today. I didn't know if I'd get any or not, but I'm very fortunate to have a life that I have today, doing what I love doing and being able to give back and help others.
Right. You make a real point of being accessible both to employees and customers.
I say it all the time. My door is open literally and figuratively. I've got a glass office. The door is always open. It's just barely seldom closed. But I answer all my own emails, my own phone calls. You can just write me a note, chuck@sweetwater.com, and I'll be sure to respond to you. Or you can call the front desk and ask for me, and I'll take your call if I'm available. And if I'm not available, I'll call you back. I just think no one is any more important than anyone else. We all deserve respect. We all deserve, to get respect from each other. And so I will return everyone's call no matter what you do or what you need.
The big advantage is you don't sleep, because I've gotten emails from you at 2 in the morning.
I do sleep. That's a bad rumor. I don't sleep a lot. Most of my life I've slept 3 or 4 hours a night.
Right.
And while the rest of the world's sleeping, I get to do some of my other fun hobbies or projects or working on music, that sort of thing.
Right. Yeah. So we got some more viewer questions here. What is your favorite song to play on saxophone?
Easy for me.
Yeah?
Well, actually, there's 2 probably. My favorite song, just because it's beautiful and I love the melody and the words, is Over the Rainbow. How inspirational is that? And so I love playing that song. I'll tell you the other song that I also like to play. There was a very famous saxophone player that was kind of my inspiration and idol, and he died about 10, 11 years ago now. A fellow named Boots Randolph. Mm-hmm. Boots Randolph was the #1 sax player in Nashville, doing all the major sessions back in the 60s and 70s with Floyd Kramer and Chet Atkins and all those guys, and played on thousands and thousands of people's albums. But he had a song that he played in 1961 that he and another fellow wrote called Yakety Sax.
Yeah.
Yakety Sax made him a lot of money. I mean, he got regular
Benny
residuals
Hill, right?
at Benny Hill. And that became the Benny Hill theme song. And although Boots didn't play the Benny Hill version, that was somebody in Europe that played that. But it was still that fun song that they play when all the YouTube videos are sped up with people rolling down the hill. That's Yakety Sax. So I love playing that just as a tribute to my friend Boots.
Right. Yeah. I remember seeing you and Boots playing with the Fort Wayne Philharmonic a few years ago.
We did. I was on the Philharmonic board at the time, and I got him to come to town and play with our Philharmonic Orchestra. He said, "I'll do it, Chuck, but you got to play with me." Talk about humbling, like one of the world's great greatest saxophone players, and
Right.
I'm going to walk on stage with him in front of a 70-piece orchestra. But it was a lot of fun.
How cool is that? How
Yeah.
cool is that?
Yeah.
So we have another question. Do you have a favorite piece of gear or instrument?
Well, of course, saxophone is my favorite instrument or favorite piece of gear. You know, what I am playing when I did that little buskering job down in Florida, or even with the Sweetwater All-Stars, I have a vocal pedal made by Boss called the VE 500. And it does harmony and reverb and effects, and it allows me to take my pitch of my saxophone and play an octave up and an octave down, or a third or a fifth. And that's just, for a saxophone player, it's a magical piece of gear. But I think there's a lot of great equipment out there, but that's a saxophone specific thing.
Well, we played a few shows together. We did a Janis Joplin tribute show, and we've done a few things through the years. You have a pedal board that you actually play your saxophone through. Not many saxophone players have pedal boards, do they?
Well, I want control of my sound. I'm a little bit of a freak about control. And so I've got a wireless mic system, of course, and then that runs into that VE 500 effects processor, and I make sure that I give a complete finished sound to the sound engineer.
Right, nice.
Just like guitar players do.
Yeah, sure, why not? Why? And you can, so there you go. Well, it works awesome. I mean, it really sounds great, and like you say, it gives you control over your own sound.
Right.
Our next question: what was your biggest challenge growing Sweetwater, and what did it teach you about yourself?
You know, my biggest challenge, and it's a great question, going back to the very beginning, when I would tell my professional friends that I'm doing this recording studio, and they always would say, Fort Wayne, Indiana? Why wouldn't you do that in Nashville? Why wouldn't you do that in LA or New York? And I would always say, no, I can do it here. I can do it in Fort Wayne. And usually about the next sentence out of them, and even my parents, it's a little bit of a joke, but for about the first 20 years of my professional life, they'd ask me when I'm getting a real job. They don't ask me that anymore. I think they figured out this is my real job. But just getting credibility in those early days, I mean, when you think about it, they didn't live in my shoes. They didn't have the dreams that I have. And it was probably, I probably got upset at them because they didn't want to support me. I think back today, it's probably pretty arrogant on my part because, again, they weren't walking in my shoes. And that's what I would encourage everyone. Not everyone around you knows exactly what you're thinking, what your dreams and your aspirations are. And so I'm not saying you don't listen to others, but I would challenge you just to go for it. Just absolutely go for your dreams because those people don't know.
Right.
If I'd have listened, there would be no Sweetwater today. I would have been working. In fact, my grandfather got me in the tool and die program at General Electric, and I'd have been a tool and die guy.
Right.
Other than I had to tell him I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do music.
Right. And where would we all be? That's pretty crazy to think about. That's pretty crazy. So we talk a lot here at Sweetwater about the Sweetwater difference. What is the Sweetwater difference? What does that mean to you?
Well, it's a lot of the things that we've already talked about today. I would never throw a disparaging word against any of our competitors across the country. They all do a lot of stuff really, really well. That being said, for what we do, I think we have a strong difference. The quality of our people is the first thing. Just absolutely the quality of our people. The standards that we set really high. If you think about what we've done yesterday and today and the level of people that have come to support us and the level of customers that have come to watch us, that's a huge, huge credibility thing. That's a Sweetwater difference that, again, I'm not throwing mud at Guitar Center or Sam Ash or Zounds or any of these other great places across the country. I'm just saying that's something we do really, really well at Sweetwater. I'm just thankful that we have that Sweetwater difference.
Right. So we're getting very close to the end of our time. We have one more viewer question, actually. We'll give this to you quickly. If you weren't running Sweetwater, what would you be doing?
I'll tell you, if I wasn't running Sweetwater, I'd like to think I'd be on the road as a musician, making about at least $50 a week and free hotel and free food like I used to. I could, to go and be a professional musician, I would love to do that. Kind of messes up my home life and my daughter and all that sort of thing, but I'd sure love to do that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Do you still have a home studio?
I do have a home studio. I got a Pro Tools set up there. I'd like to think that I can talk any of those technical languages. So I've got Pro Tools at home. I've got Digital Performer I use out live. I'm thankful that I have access to all that technology and tools.
Right. Given that you're so on the cutting edge of all that, I know that you see things from manufacturers long before probably anybody else in the industry. They're bringing it to you for your opinions and your thoughts. Where do you see the industry going?
More of the same. The good thing is it's not about the equipment. I remember in the early days recording on a cassette recorder and then reel-to-reel tape recorders and digital. It's not about the equipment, it's about the music. And as long as we keep writing and producing great music and have some tools around it to capture that so we can share it with others, I'm thrilled with that. And if you think about what's happened with the internet in the last 10 years or so, it has just absolutely made it possible for anybody from anywhere in the world to get their music out and their voice, whatever that voice is, to share with others. And I'm excited about that as bandwidth gets better and faster and the tools get more affordable and easier to use. And, there'll be lots more great music.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's why we're doing this, right? Is to keep bringing that. And I've said it several times during the GearFest little transitions and things I've been doing here. This is all about the passion for the music, the passion for music makers,
absolutely, and
the passion for the gear. I mean, we're all gearheads, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why we're here. Any final thoughts for people with GearFest? Can we look for more of the same next year? Any big plans to change things up?
Well, the cat has been out of the bag by doing this virtual this year, and we were talking earlier. I think next year I hope that we can have it on campus live, but also do a portion of it virtually like this. And I'm just really appreciative of all the presenters, all the manufacturers that have helped us do this, and then even more appreciative of all the viewers and listeners that are watching what we're talking about and what we're sharing with them today. And I just say thank you. I'm just very, very grateful to everybody.
Right, right. It's absolutely awesome, and everybody here works so hard to put this on because we just love doing it. We love the gear, we love the music. And I always get the question, when do you start planning the next GearFest? When does that come up? I saw that you sent out an invite to a meeting next week.
Yep, next week we start on next year already. I probably should have let it sleep for a week or two, but now we want to recap what went really well from this weekend. We want to recap what we could improve and get better. And so I don't know, Tuesday or Wednesday next week, we have our first meeting for GearFest 2021.
Awesome. We'll look forward to it. Chuck, thanks so much for sitting down with us today. I know you're a busy guy and it's your Saturday, but I also know you've been watching the live stream. So, but we appreciate you taking time to sit down with us and just sharing yourself with us today. And thanks for all you do.
Well, thank you, Mitch, and thank you for working so hard. I've watched most of the stuff you've done, and you represent us so well. So thank you.
Thank you for saying so. It's a blast for me. Absolutely. And thanks for checking this out. We've got lots more coming to you from GearFest 2020.
Fort Wayne, Indiana is not only Sweetwater's hometown, but also a city on the rise. Home to thousands of musicians, dozens of venues and annual festivals, a thriving downtown, and a brand new riverfront district, Fort Wayne is a great place for our employees to thrive. In addition to its low cost of living, Fort Wayne has something to offer to everyone. From great local restaurants and food trucks, breweries and distilleries, farmers markets, sport teams and shows, and a stellar community school system. With over 100 miles of bike and walking trails, 87 parks and river access, there's also plenty of opportunities for outdoor recreation. Fort Wayne is also an easy drive away from major cities like Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, and Nashville, making gigging and day trips all within easy driving distance. Like Sweetwater, Fort Wayne has a special kind of energy. Whether you're a recent graduate, starting a family, or an experienced professional looking to settle down, Fort Wayne is more than just a nice place to live. It's a place we're proud to call home.
Welcome to Sweetwater. Let's go check out why this is an amazing place to work. Follow me. First and foremost, we got an amazing music store. The thousands of items we sell online every day are literally right here at your fingertips, and at a special employee discount. That's how you do it right there. One of the great things about this campus is that there are musicians and music everywhere. Our campus is electric. There's always something going on, and you'll never know who you'll run into. Welcome to the Downbeat Diner, where our kitchen serves breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the employees and their families. There's a variety of delicious food served here every day, including gluten-free and vegetarian options as well. All meals are prepared fresh, in-house, daily. One of my favorite things here is the Crescendo Cafe, where they have a full-service coffee and espresso bar. They even got ice cream. I'm good on that. Because Sweetwater is committed to health and wellness, they provided us a health club and a personal trainer. Need to get cardio in over your lunch break? No need to race across town. Our facility is right here on campus. Private showers and dressing rooms make it a snap to clean up and get back into action without missing a beat. We also have a medical clinic with a doctor and a registered nurse on site Monday through Friday for all Sweetwater employees and their families. They're here to serve you, regardless of your insurance plan, for free. One of the other cool amenities we have here at Sweetwater is the Wavelength Salon and Spa. The spa has everything from stylists, manicurists, to a licensed massage therapist. Take a little bit off the back. Because we work hard at Sweetwater, we play hard with our free arcade. This is our concierge team, and they can help you get anything from your dry cleaning, your shipping, down to getting tickets to your local shows, and much more. We've just scratched the surface on what Sweetwater provides for its employees. Come check us out. For more information on Sweetwater careers and to find your dream job, visit us at sweetwater.com/careers.
Hi, my name is Lynette Williams, and on behalf of Korg, I'm so sad that we can't be together this year for Sweetwater's GearFest 2020. But you can catch GearFest online this year, so that's cool. I represent Korg. I love playing Korg boards. These are my favorite keyboards to play. I've been playing it since the early 2000s when I first started touring with will.i.am, and I've been using it with every artist from Childish Gambino to Layla Hathaway to Bone Thugs and Harmony. I love it so much. I love that it's versatile. I love that you can use the factory sounds, or you can create and program your own sounds, which I've created for endless artists, and I just love creating patches. I love making them my own, and that's the cool thing about Korg. Like, everything is right in front of you, everything you need, from changing the highs, the lows, the polarity, the attacks. I mean, the list is endless. Korg just rocks. And if you are interested in any Korg keyboards, Korg products, you can catch it at Sweetwater online GearFest 2020.
I'd like to thank Chuck Surack for sitting down with us. That was a great interview, and I always learn something when I sit down with Chuck. He's done so much in this industry. It was just really cool. I hope you enjoyed it. We're so happy to have you here with us here at GearFest 2020. It's day 2. We're not even halfway through the day. We've still got some incredible sessions coming up for you, including Slash, Nile Rodgers, the ever-popular producers panel, and we'll have a must-see performance with the immediate family, and just so much more coming your way. But right now, we're going to sit down with one of the greats of the audio industry. Alan Sides is a Grammy Award-winning producer and recording engineer, gear manufacturer, studio owner, studio designer. He kind of does it all. And his credits include everyone from Eric Clapton to Phil Collins, Green Day to Alanis Morissette, Ray Charles. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Today we'll be talking with Alan about analog recording. We'll dig into the history of analog, talk about the technology and limitations, and we'll contrast it with digital. Plus, we'll examine how we can bring the best parts of analog recording into the digital age. Here's my interview with Alan Sides. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a great workshop for you with Alan Sides. What we're going to be talking about is where all those analog modeled and emulated processors and recording techniques that we have came from, and what that analog heritage really means in today's digital world. And no one better to talk about that than Alan Sides. It's great to have you here.
Oh, good to be here, Mitch. Glad to do it.
Absolutely, and we're excited because, I mean, you know this stuff inside and out, both as a manufacturer, as an engineer, as a studio designer and owner. I mean, you've kind of covered the whole gamut of what analog means.
I certainly have, you know, and there's pluses and minuses to everything. So we might talk a little bit about, you know, go back in history a little bit about recording live to 2-track. You know, my good friend Phil Ramone, when he was doing the Dionne Warwick records, I mean, basically you're doing one pass, live 2-track. Of course, you can cut between pieces, but other than that, the mix is the mix. This is a finished product. So everyone out in the studio are listening to, basically, they're hearing what you're mixing, and then they're adjusting. So you know, I'll talk a little bit about analog. In the early days of analog, and let's talk about 2-track when we were already at stereo. Typically, a lot of time we're using Scotch 111 tape, and this old the thing about this tape, it was good tape in that it lasts a long time. I pulled stuff out from the early 50s. It still plays like the day it was made. So it's a pretty stable. Next to stone tablets, it's a solid format. You know? Now, the limitations of this tape at that time were basically, you know, it was a little on the noisy side, so you really had to watch your level. But in the same respect, if you went beyond a certain point, obviously it turned to mush. So a lot of times when you're doing a live to 2-track, you're riding the master fader for the whole song. So you start off the front, it's sounding great, you're balancing, but you're also riding the master to making sure when the tune gets big, you're still keeping your thresholds where they need to be. Otherwise, it's not so good. The other thing about an analog is that we do a live 2-track period, obviously your reverb, everything is what it is. Now, a lot of times if you're doing a live 2-track and maybe even as a mixer, music I've got it, but I've missed a cue on a reverb, it has to come up, or I've mixed a cue, I can have them do an intercut and I can cut it in and slice it. In fact, sometimes, you might have 15 intercuts in a single piece of music to get what you want. Now, even in the early days, my very first studio that I built, which was it was in the basement of an old amusement park in Venice, California, and I had 2 2-tracks. So typically what I'd do is I would cut the entire band as a stereo track, okay, minus the solos and minus the vocals. Then, once I did that, I would then have a second 2-track. I'd play that, and I would record all the lead vocal sections, and I could do as many takes as I wanted until I got it just the way I liked it. And then if there were background sections, I would do those. Then I would do the solo section. We'd pick a solo, and then I would just cut the whole piece together. And so I was actually only 1 generation away, and all those elements are first generation. So my finished 2-track sounded quite good, but of course, it had to be, everything was pre-balanced, so you couldn't, it's like the Beatles managed to do that fairly well.
Right, yeah. You had to have foresight, and you really had to know the music going in, because if you're surprised, then the take is basically ruined.
Absolutely. I mean, and so, you could edit, but years later, I would do a lot of audiophile records where I was either doing direct-to-disc or live-to-2-tracks. So for me, I was familiar with that because I was doing it in my garage. And so, the days when Pro Tools came along and we had the unlimited track capacity where you didn't need to make a decision because you just keep printing takes. The problem then, because you had so many channels that it became such a nightmare after the fact, say, well, God, we have 36 takes of the guitar solo, and now let's start going through this again. And then as an engineer, what I would always do is in the Pro Tools era, I'm always taking notes. Any high point, make sure you remember it because otherwise it gets lost in the dust. But going back to analog again, when live 2-track was a pretty amazing format, and the really good engineers who nailed it made some amazing recordings. But then we got into multi-track. 3-track was interesting because all of a sudden now we can record the orchestra and we have a vocal on 1 track and we can punch the vocal in and we can make corrections, which you couldn't do before. But one of the problems we had was that, a lot of times you print a reverb in stereo on the stereo track, but if you printed the verb for the vocal, it would have to be in mono because you put it in the vocal track. So what Capitol would do, they would, for monitoring purposes, they would listen to reverb on the track and they would add reverb to the vocal. But when they did the mix, then they would add the stereo verb on the vocal, But the other thing about the analog period from that, if you listen to the original master as it was, it usually sounded great. But when you went 1 generation down in the early era of analog, that was about a 20% loss in quality. I mean, the 2-track mix, and so like sometimes I've gone back to some of the early 3-tracks, and the sound of the 3-tracks is 20% better than what the mixes sounded like. And so if you then retransfer those, you can make some pretty amazing recordings. I did a mix of, but going on that, let me go back on to 8-track. Now 8-track was a tough period because all of a sudden now we could control everything, but all of a sudden you end up having drums in mono on 1 track, bass on mono, strings are mono, backgrounds are mono, everything's mono. So you got 8 mono tracks because you don't have, if you want everything separate, there's not enough room for stereo. So 8-track was not the most lovely period sonically because when we used to have everything was wide stereo, all of a sudden it was mixed mono. But certain engineers like Roy Halley, who did the Blood, Sweat, and Tears stuff, Roy, he'd record the drums in stereo on 2 tracks as a complete entity, kick, snares, the whole thing stereo. And then he'd record the horns in stereo, different things, and then he would do punches and inserts to do rides. And so he did a lot with 8-track that other people weren't doing at the time. So his stuff, like on the BS&T spinning wheel, those are all stereo drums. And Bobby Coleman's stuff sounds, very impressive. But anyway, yeah, so 16-track was certainly a really pleasant time because all of a sudden now we could have stereo again. And then when 24-track came along, we could really get some fun stereo things happening. And then, of course, as a studio owner, the thing that got crazy was 124 wasn't enough. So then we'd have 2 24s, and then we'd have 3 24s. We even had 4 24s locked together on certain sessions. Wow. I think it was a line lunch, it might have been all night long, where we basically had, the mix was done in 2 rooms. We actually have 2 24s locked up, all the rhythm elements in 1 room, and then 2 more 24 tracks locked up at the second room, sync the whole thing together, and the mixer would go from one to the other.
Wow, that had to be just scary, though. I mean, it had to be nerve-wracking, assuming all that mechanical stuff was going to stay locked.
Well, of course, and keeping everything synchronized was always that's how situated. When the synchronizers came along, it was always a pain in the rear end, if I may say. Keeping, say, you hit play, And then we'd be waiting and waiting. Is it locked? Locked? Nope, no, not locked. One more time. And finally you play it. It was all synchronized, and you hope for the best.
Right.
But then when the link synchronizers came along, it changed everything. Finally, you could actually operate 2 multitracks as if they were one. But talking a little about the quality of analog. The thing is, analog has infinite resolution. Where digital is basically, it's like looking at a picture in a newspaper with lots of dots. When you look at the picture really closely, you see the dots, but as you get away, it looks fine. In analog, really, it's an unlimited resolution. Now, the negative is that you do have a noise threshold. It's a problem. But in digital, if you drop the level down below a certain point, you've got a resolution loss. So level is important, so is high frequency. In the early days of digital, when the Pro Tools first came along in 44.1, your low-level high-frequency ambient information just disappeared. It just went away. And a reference, what I mean by that is, say you're recording a set of drums, you've got a set of nice mics over the drums, and the drums maybe are a little dark, so you've recorded flat. Now, if you EQ'd after you recorded on Pro Tools and you went, say, +4 to 15K shelf on some API EQs, it got brighter, but it got kind of harsher. Now, if the mics were coming in live and you EQ'd it, it sounded open and airy. Because the 15 and 16K information, because the high transient, the drums are very high transient, is recorded at a very low level, and the resolution just went away. Now, as we got to a higher bit rate and higher sampling rates, we were able to get higher resolution in that lower level. But when I was recording digitally, I would always, when I'm recording things that are on the dark side, I would make sure I do my EQ in the analog domain before I put it into digital, so that I get that resolution at a higher bit rate. So then there's much more air. Now, but on analog, you've got all this resolution. Even though there's a little bit of noise, you have just as much resolution at low level as you do as high level. And so we like the sound of analog. The other thing about analog is that when you record too loud, it compresses. But it's not a nasty sound. It's a fairly pleasant sound. In the same respect, if you're recording on a multi-track analog machine, say you're recording a 16-track and you're recording a kick drum, if you're looking at VU meters and you're hitting a 0, say you've got an analog tape machine, say we're using Scotch 250 tape, it's going back to the 80s, right? And say that you're set up for +4 or +3 on the machine. If you hit 0 on a VU meter, you've probably got +16s hitting the tape that you're not seeing. And so what happens in the analog domain is when you listen to the playback, it gets pretty mushy. So what I did is, as you start dropping the level and listening to the output, you get down to about -3 on the VU meter, and the kick sounds pretty damn good. All of a sudden, it gets clear and defined because So a little bit of tape compression is a good thing. A lot of tape compression is mush. And the other thing I got to say about analog is that, if I'm listening to the track coming in live, that's a 24-track analog recording. I'm not listening to the tape. I'm listening to the input. Then I play it back. Well, when I play it back, it doesn't sound like the input. If everything is right, and I'm very careful, and I record everything, it sounds pretty darn good, but, it's a little softer sounding, not quite as clear and defined as it was originally. But it has all the air and the space around the instruments. It's something that has all this resolution. And the other thing is, in analog domain, I tend to record mostly at 30 IPS because I love the clarity, the highs, and the low noise. But 15 IPS has better low frequency response. So a standard, say a 24-track machine at 30 IPS, say a Studer 800 has, your 40 hertz is probably down 2.5 dB in reference to, say, 60, and 30 hertz is probably down 8 or 10. Now, we had these custom analog machines called Ampex ATR 124s, and they were flat at 40 hertz at 30 IPS. And so they were down just a little bit. Say at 36, they're probably down, 3.5 dB. So a lot of times in an analog domain, what I would do is I would patch an EQ in, maybe like an old ITI, which is George Masterman's first EQ. I'd listen to the repro, I'd listen to the input, and I would EQ the low end until I got exactly what I wanted coming off the repro. So that when I played back, an input, I had a little too much bass, but when I played it back, it was perfect. So I would correct for 30 IPS low frequency loss on both the bass guitar and the kick, so I get maximum resolution. The other thing
So let me interrupt you 1 second there. So you've used a number of terms there. That's someone who's never worked with tape or an analog machine might not know what some of those mean. Can you explain for us what IPS means when you're talking about tape saturation, even things like biasing? You know, some of those kinds of terms come up all the time, and people may not understand what they mean in the real analog domain.
Well, in regards to IPS, except the speed that you run it, typically there's two speeds that multi-tracks are running at. We're about 24 tracks and 16 tracks and 8 tracks. Professionally, generally speaking, it's going to be 15 or 30 IPS. Now, at 30 IPS, obviously tape's moving faster, so you get a little more resolution, you get a little better top end, and I think you get a little more air. That's what I would say. Mm-hmm. At 15, because at the time these machines were built, the heads were really designed for 15. So at the lower frequencies, we got a longer wavelength. So when the tape goes faster, the heads were not wide enough to pick up the lowest frequencies that they do at 15. Now, later on, it was possible, Greg Orton, who designed the Ampex ATR heads, and he designed a custom head that could be flat at 30 hertz at 30 IPS, because it was only a question of changing the design of the pole piece to get it to produce those frequencies. But, which is why, one more thing, I'll get back to the definition here, but if you're comparing, say, a Studer 800 to an Ampex ATR 124, the 800 doesn't have as good low bass 30 IPS, but also it's not near as clear and defined. The ATR 124 had a higher slew rate, was faster amplifiers, and less stuff in the audio path, and so had better bass.
Right.
Now, in regards to tape saturation, what that basically is that once you go past a certain threshold of the analog tape, it actually you actually can't record any louder. So what happens is it compresses. It's a kind of but it's a compressor that's pretty soft sounding, and it's never blatant distortion. It's more like the signal just gets softer and quieter. Now, it's like anything. It's like digital. If you're in a digital platform and you hit an occasional red, it's not a problem. But you're starting to get a lot of reds, it gets pretty nasty. Analog's the same way. If you go too far, it just turns to mush. Mm-hmm. Because not only do you get compression, but you also get high frequency start dropping as well if you go too far. But then a lot of rockers, they like the sound of their guitars, electric guitars and stuff. A little bit of tape compression adds a sort of kind of a pleasant sound to the guitars. And so sometimes what they would do is, once again, you're recording some electric guitars, you've got it sounding a certain way. I go and record it and I listen to repro. And then you start turning the level up and you find out when you get just the right amount of tape compression, it actually makes your guitar, it adds kind of a very nice compression to it that you could not get out of a conventional compressor. I think that's why, the plugins have been so popular, because they give you something that's hard to get. We were doing a session one time over at Record One Studios, and I think it was Aerosmith, and I think it was an early record, and they recorded it in Pro Tools on the first digital system, the early Pro Tools, and they recorded it all at fairly low safe levels. So there wasn't much resolution, because they didn't realize it was important to use all your bits. And so I remember the engineer says he just couldn't get the background vocals to gel. So I ended up transferring him to my Studer 800 analog machine, and then transferring him back, and it took a lot of this kind of dirt or this digital grit out, and it made it sound much silkier, actually much more musical. So sometimes it blended it in a way, and it took the gradations out and made it sound more analog. So in that case, it was degrading the signal, but in a good way. Right.
You mentioned a couple of times. You've mentioned monitoring input and repro. Just so everyone's aware, what does that mean?
Well, let's look at this. When you're working in Pro Tools or any sort of digital format, you never hear input. There's no way to hear input. Everything you hear is being digitally processed, and you hear what you hear. In the recording of analog days, when we're in input, basically we're hearing the mics basically coming straight to the speakers. In other words, where there's no analog. I mean, you're going through the electronics of the machine, but you're not hearing the tape sound. So, of course, it was always a little disappointing because when you play back the tape, now you hear the sound of the tape, which never sounded as good as it did coming through the input. And so the musicians never get to hear that because they're out in the studio. But you just heard it, now you've heard it, it sounds ridiculous. They walk in for the playback, and yeah, it still sounds good, but you should have heard it before I printed it.
It was crazy. I mean, working in those days because of those things you had to account for when you were working as engineer in the room.
Well, even in the analog, because I couldn't stand a tape copy. So like when I would do mixes, and I worked on a lot of records, a lot of times if it was a song I really loved, I would do a print for me and a print for the label. So I'd have a first generation 2-track that I would keep in my file. Because the problem is if I made a 30 IPS tape and then I made a copy of it, once again, I lost another 10 or 12%. Because as tapes improved, the copies weren't near as bad. And then I might talk a little bit about when Dolby came in. Because, you know, in the analog domain, Dolby was the first real noise reduction system. But for every plus, there's a minus. And the Dolby A system, when you listen to it, yes, it was quieter, but also, you know, it compressed the signal, then it expanded the signal, and it never quite got it back to where it was at the start. So it reduced the noise, but like on kicks and snares and punchy stuff, it just made it sound much mushier. And to me, I never used Dolby because I really didn't like the degradation it added to the thing. It gave you a little bit less noise. So what I would do is, when I was using, if I had a budget and I could do it, I would cut my basic tracks on 16, because a 16 track has wider track widths than a 24. So it's quieter, it has more dynamic range, and it sounds fatter. But what I would do is I would print my kick on 2 tracks, and I'd put my snare on 2 tracks, and I'd play them in mono. That cuts the noise in half. It's like a wider track width. If you played it in stereo, it'd be the same noise. When you put it in mono, the noise drops by 3 dB. So it allows me to record my kick and snare at a bit lower level and get super punch and also drop the noise by half. So I would cut my basics on a 16 and then do the overdubs on a 24. So I'd have a 16-24. I think Bruce Woodine, he had this thing called the Acusonic press. This was like 3 16 tracks locked together at one point. Bruce was, right. You know, because 16 tracks really, you know, the wider the track, the better it sound. We went 24 track, we paid a price. Now, so we talked about tape compression, and we've talked about IPS speed. I would say the thing about analog and digital, because I was make a comparison here, is that if you want to get the most resolution out of it, the level you record at is critical in both digital and analog. So in analog, I have to find that perfect spot where I get the right amount of transient or impact without getting just the minimum amount of tape compression with the most perfect sound I get. So in analog too, the same thing. Generally speaking, I always found it better to be EQing prior to recording, because once again, if it was a dull piano and I needed to add quite a bit of top after the fact, I'm not only bringing up the piano, I'm bringing up all the tape hiss.
Right.
Right. Now in the case of digital, I'm not bringing up hiss, but I'm not bringing up the resolution because there's not any sound. In the low sampling rates in the early years, digital was pretty nasty. What I mean by that, I mean, you know, if I'm recording on a 24-track analog machine, and I play it back, it sounds pretty natural and pretty close to the source. Early digital was harsh, it was harsher, it was thinner. It was a tough. And a lot of people didn't like it at all for a long period of time. But what's interesting is the first digital machines, like the Soundstream digital machine, was one of the first ones. I did a record with a Duke Ellington Orchestra and a Diane Carroll live. It was direct to disc, but we did it as a live digital recording too. And that machine sounded pretty amazing. And also when the 3M came along with the 32-track 3M machine, that's what Nightfly was done on, that machine sounded amazing. But when Pro Tools came along, those machines were both at 50K sampling. They were 50K sampling, 16-bit. Pro Tools was 44.1, 16-bit, and it was not pretty. But we figured out how to make it work, got better and better and better. Sound got better, everything got better as time went along. But when you're recording digitally, it's extremely important. Once again, you want to maximize resolution, which means that if you were recording a duller instrument, it's better to do the EQ prior to the fact. Now remember, this is in an analog EQ is not the same thing as digital EQ. So if you're using an analog EQ, say on the overhead drums or acoustic guitar and piano, before it hits the converter, then you're adding, you're bringing all that high frequency resolution up into a higher bit range. But if you record it flat and use a digital EQ, then you're not adding any resolution, you're just bringing up whatever exists in the recording.
Right. Which is contrary to the way many people work today, because most of us will record, with as little processing as possible, assuming we can add that in the mix later. What you're suggesting is the more analog approach would be to do all that on the way in.
I think so, if you have the gear to do it. Because the same thing, what I'd say is that digital EQ, the bass sounds great, no resolution, but the high frequency boost, particularly like the 16, 17K stuff, if you compare it to, say, a Pultec EQP1A, or you compare it to an API 550A EQ, that it just doesn't have the same sound. It's a little bit harsher and not as airy and quite as open. Now, there are certain plugins, like the UA version of the EQP1A Pultec. The 16K of that, I gotta say, sounds pretty sweet. So there are some good digital EQs. But in order to eliminate the problem of resolution in the lower gain ranges, I do like recording at a higher sampling rate. So I find if I record at 96 or even at 192, all of a sudden, then when I put the EQs in, I get all this resolution back. So it allows me to record without EQ, and I still can bring it back up again. And that's the biggest. Right. I hear more, like if I record something at 48 and I do a nice job, it sounds fine. If I record at 96, it doesn't sound that much better per se, but if I have to EQ stuff, it sounds way better. That's when I really hear the difference.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Right. So you're suggesting that it's higher sample rates as well.
Yeah, that's when you really, because then when you start reaching for that stuff, the resolution is there to bring it back. And you really hear that in 2 seconds.
Right.
And so if you have a format that allows you to record, 96 is pretty easy these days. 192, if you've got a lot of tracks, becomes a bit more complex.
Right.
But
well, I wish we could keep going all day long. Believe it or not, our time has already flown by. There's so much we could talk about with all this. But if I could summarize what this reminds me of is when I talk to a great engineer like yourself or Bruce Swedin or Al Schmidt or some of the guys who really came up through the analog trenches, if you will. It reminds me of being told so many times that when it comes time for me to do the mix, I just push the faders up. Because the work's been done on the front end and you've captured the sounds with the tones that they're going to have at the end. And to me, that's the real takeaway from the analog years, is bringing that into the digital domain of having your sounds already there when you come to mix.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Because, the thing is, if it ain't cooking, at that point, you're going to have to fight really hard to get it at the back end.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Alan, thanks so much for sharing your experience and all your knowledge. I mean, like I say, we could go on for hours, digging into everything that you know about this stuff. And maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll come back around sometime and I'd love to sit down and do a longer interview with you where we talk more about this stuff.
Well, thank you, Mitch. I sure appreciate it. And it's great talking to somebody who actually understands the stuff too. As an engineer, and you do this stuff yourself, so you know.
Well, thank you for saying so. And man, thanks for taking time today. I know how busy you are, and we appreciate you joining us for GearFest 2020.
Oh, I was going to say glad to be there, but virtually glad to be there.
Right. Glad to have you here virtually, exactly. Take care. We'll see you soon.
See you soon.
And thank you for joining us here at GearFest 2020. We're glad to have Alan Sides joining us. So much great information there. Lots of wisdom to be gained. I'm Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater.
The GearFest sale just got a whole lot better. For 2 days only, save up to 75% on all the gear you love. It's all online during the GearFest 10 event flash sale. Find exclusive deals on top brands, instruments, software, live sound, and recording gear, plus so much more. It's all happening for 2 days only at sweetwater.com/GearFest.
So one of the most fun things we get to do here at GearFest is give stuff away. And we are giving away gear every hour, so I hope you've registered for the hourly GearFest gear giveaway. We're giving away free gear that totals up to $35,000, and you should definitely register to win your share of that, as well as a chance to win the grand prize, a fantastic $5,000 recording package. It's not too late to enter. Just head over to sweetwater.com/GearFest, but first watch this next session before you do that. Then you can head over and register. A big part of the Sweetwater story is our recording studio. The studio is at a humble beginning in the back of founder and CEO Chuck Surack's VW bus, sort of like this one here, although this one's a little smaller than the one that he was driving. Today, the Sweetwater studios comprise 3 Rustberger designed rooms. They have the latest technology. It's really a state-of-the-art facility, and they have just an incredible microphone locker as well. It's a fantastic place to make music. And for our next session, you're going to get a chance to see that. We're going to join the Sweetwater Studios team as they work with singer Carolyn Martin to record the classic 19th century ballad, Wayfaring Stranger. Great song. Listen in as they arrange the song. We'll learn how our engineers set up for a session. Then we'll all get to watch as they record and mix the track. This is going to be great. Check it out.
Today we're going to be recording Carolyn Martin, who's a Texas-based singer, doing an real old 19th century American song called Wayfaring Stranger. And so we decided to do this partly because it's a great old song, and it's one that when Carolyn and I were talking about it, we thought, this would be fun to treat as a real rootsy thing, as opposed to a gospel song. So we wanted to take a swing at it and see if we could do something that was a little more interesting than the way we would normally play it. So along with Carolyn, who will be playing acoustic guitar and singing, we'll be using the Sweetwater in-house rhythm section. So we have people here who actually play on records for folks. We have Phil Nash, who's a wonderful keyboard player, well, piano and organ, as well as being a great producer.
Always steal from the best. That's all you need to remember.
Don Carr will be playing electric guitar.
Hey, I'm Don Carr, and yeah, and you're not.
Nick DiVirgilio is our drummer. Nick has a long history working with prog bands, and he even spent a couple of years with one of the Cirque du Soleil shows.
Can you make your arms like parallel to the ground doing this?
And I'll be playing bass. The only thing we haven't decided yet is whether I'll be playing upright bass or electric bass.
This one's more like every Motown record.
It'll be whatever suits the song the best. So pre-production is the process wherein the artist presents the song that they're going to do to the production team. First, just play it top to bottom.
Okay.
Because the way I always mess up church when they go, and then we do 3 more verses. Right.
Yeah. There are other verses that I usually just sing those 2 verses. There are other verses available.
Well, that's because if you sang all the verses, the song would be
7 minutes long.
Yeah.
Right.
I like that.
If you like that
good.
length,
yeah.
Then we'll stick with that.
So that's really a chance for the conversation between the producer and the artist, trying to figure out what the best way to present that song is. Let's go ahead and stop there. From the last line of that chorus, from the D minor.
Oh, going over home.
So that's the turn right there.
But maybe on the at the very end, maybe we could do I'm going there twice, and
sure.
Instead of in the second time, going there.
Once we hear what the song sounds like, then we can start making suggestions or decisions about how we should record it. Sometimes it's as simple as speed it up a little bit, slow it down a little bit. Other times we'll actually talk about changing sections around so that we have a verse here or a solo, or no verse and no solo.
I like it built in like that, where the turn starts right when she finishes.
So going from the D minor, okay, let's go ahead and stop there. I mean, doing what you're talking about, but after chorus 1.
Over home.
And we'll also talk about instrumentation. We may want an acoustic piano, we may want an electric piano, we may not want a piano. Kind of like the way the kids do these days.
Yeah.
And that's why I was thinking of maybe instead of, there's piano, but the whirly thing is so cool.
Yeah,
maybe just playing the piano as though
it'd be cool.
But we don't know any of that until we actually hear the song and know what the artist has in the way of a vision, and then we help them to achieve that vision.
Yeah, I like that.
I like that. I think it's tight. It gives us a little chance to play and.
Yeah.
So cool.
I think we will.
That's a plan.
What we came to do.
We did.
So before the session even starts, I usually get with the engineer and see what they're thinking as far as microphones and as far as setup in the room goes, and I'll put together an input list based on whatever they're thinking for the session will make the most sense.
One of the great things about Studio A are the sight lines here. We have a nice large window into the tracking room, so everyone can sort of see what's going on in the control room, and anyone in the ISO booths has got great line of sight.
We position the musicians on stations so that they can all see each other, and so that while they're playing, they can decide on parts together.
Not stopping on the second one at the end?
No, we're not going to do this.
Okay.
We're only doing that on the first one.
Doing that just at the turn, so the stop is not going to happen
Correct.
at the end.
combined with our house band, or there's not a lot of fixing to do here, which is quite nice. Having those guys play, they play great together, and really set up an artist's song when they get a chance to. So it's a pleasure being able to be part of that team.
That's the outro you're at right now, right? No, well, after the two lines of solos, let's do it on the following line. I got that, but when it gets to the 6 minors, go back to the other. Yeah, when we get to the 6 minors, go back to the other.
Session setups are usually really energetic, and there usually is a lot of moving parts, so it's great to have all hands on deck, and we all kind of just have a good time and follow the input list, get everything ready to go, make sure that everyone has everything they need for the session to go smoothly before we go off and start tracking.
Hey there, I'm Nick DiVirgilio. We're at Studio A at Sweetwater Studios recording Wayfaring Stranger with Miss Carolyn Martin and our whole studio team here. It's a very simple song, very vibey and kind of ominous sounding a little bit. It's a great song. And I have this old school, not old school, it's like the old model, I should say, of the Ludwig Classic Oak. This one was actually called the Keystone X. They changed the name to Classic Oak just last year, I think, but it's the exact same kit. Oak and maple wood. Nice big fat sound on the drums. Got my ProMark Firegrain 5A sticks here, some great Zildjians. K-Cons Constantinople's 20 inches on the 2 crashes, a big 24-inch K light ride, some old Carope hats, so a nice warm sound to fit the vibe of this tune. And that's why I picked these drums for this song.
Hi, I'm Shaun Dealey from Sweetwater Studios, here to talk to you about some drum mics we have on the Ludwig kit we have in the studio today. I have a few microphones on the kick drum. I have an AKG D12E microphone on the inside of the kick drum. On the outside of the kick drum, I have an Audio-Technica 4047, which is a large diaphragm condenser. Adds a nice little bit of air and some bottom end to the drum itself. Combined together, we have a nice sounding kick drum. We have a pair of overheads, Shep's CM5 MK4 cardioid small diaphragm condensers. I have them set up in XY configuration. I really enjoy using these microphones on drums. They're very detailed. After the overheads, we have a few room mic options or drum kit microphones that are not close mics. About 6 feet away from the kick drum is a Chandler Red large diaphragm tube condenser. That microphone really grabs a nice mono image of the drum kit. And hanging right above it, I have an AEA R88, which is a stereo ribbon microphone, and that gives me a very nice stereo image of the drum kit. So between the two of those, I can combine an overall picture of the drum kit from about 6 feet out, which gives me a nice balance of low end, not too much cymbal, and can kind of really bring in some depth to the drum kit.
I'm Dave Martin. I played bass on the song. And one of the things that we decide when we're cutting a track with an artist is the sound that we want. And I decided to play this one right here, which is a reissue of the original 1951 Fender P-Bass. So I came in ready for a couple of options, and the 51 was what we wanted to do. We're recording this through 2 DIs at this point. The first one is a Rupert Neve DI, which is very clean and very transparent. The other one is a dark glass vintage deluxe. It's a preamp and DI, so it adds a little distortion, a little dirt, and the combination of the clean and the dirty is how you get exactly the sound that you hear on the record.
Hey, I'm Don Carr, and I'm the guitar player for Sweetwater Studios. And for this particular song, I chose a Gretsch 6120. Lots of vibe, lots of vibe. So, one of the other things I used on this track was I used a slide, and I like to put the slide on my pinky so I can fret notes behind it as well and still play the slide. I did a lot of that, so you hear a little bit of like bend with the bar, a little bend with the slide, a little bend with the notes, and It all kind of like gels and swells together. It's kind of an interesting little mix. You can't really tell when it's slide necessarily or when it's bar. That's kind of the whole point. It's just one sort of cohesive sound. The amp I used was a Fender Tweed Twin. It's got a lot of depth and a lot of overtones to it, but it's a really clean amp. Again, nice and articulate, so it sits in the track really well.
Hey everybody, Bobby here from Sweetwater Studios. We're going to take a look at what we were using on our artist, Miss Carolyn Martin. Up here for her vocal, we've got a Telefunken U47. It's a tube-powered large diaphragm condenser microphone. And for the acoustic, we've got another Telefunken large diaphragm tube-powered one, but this one is an ELAM 251. We have them angled at about a 90-degree angle. That way we can use the 47 to capture her voice and the 251 to capture the acoustic. So as you can see, where this one is, where the 251 is placed, the null point in a figure 8 pattern would be right here. That's pointed directly towards where my voice is coming from. So with this setup, you can get some really great separation for a singer-songwriter type of setup.
I am a poor wayfaring stranger while traveling through this world of woe. Yet there's no sickness, toil, or danger in that bright world to which I go. I'm going there to see my Father. I'm going there, no more to roam. I'm only going over yonder. I'm only going over home. Those dark clouds all gather round me. I know my way is rough and steep, but beauteous feet